Welcome one, welcome all to SimSpeed TV. You know what time it is. It's time for V8SCOPS 2024 season. Another chapter in the long history of this fantastic league, starting its 11th season. Potentially 10 and a half if you count the 2014 test season. It's going to be so much fun here. We're here for round one at Montreal, the 199th race in V8SCOPS history. And to bring it to you all live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick, it's me, Reese Gardner. I got Scott Rankin with me in the comms box for Split 2 action. Ryan Jones is going to be joining us later. Jay Kennedy on production as always. Scott, once again, V8SCOPS, round one, Montreal. It's been the case for quite a few years now, but I never get bored of it.
It's just an interesting track. It's a lovely track. I mean, we've all got a moment that brings us back in time and brings us back to this place in particular. Montreal's just something else, to be perfectly honest. And it's just known for those drives. I mean, Xfinity have done races here, and the NASCARs is probably closest to getting V8 supercars here in real life. And then again, who can forget those laps from Jensen Button from the rear of the field to the front, you know, how many times in changeable conditions? Boy, that was a GP to remember. And then SCOPS is probably the third thing on my mind that when we consider this place.
Yeah, absolutely. There is the map of the track. An iconic layout, the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal on the man-made island of Ile Notre Dame that was constructed for Expo 67. This island also hosted the rowing competitions in the Summer Olympics in the rectangular pool down the bottom of the screen. Certainly a big sporting area here in Montreal, and this track is accessible to the public for most of the year, mostly on bikes. Cars do travel on it as well, but it's not quite a public road circuit in the same way that something like Albert Park would be, and certainly drives like a proper racetrack here with chicanes, hard braking zones, and some lovely flowing S-bends throughout the middle of the lap. Scott, I think one of the defining factors is going to be the slipstream and how well you can attack those curbs without getting an off-track or a slowdown.
It's always is. I mean, can you keep the car nice and planted? Can you rotate over them? And most critically, the Wall of Champions. Who will it claim tonight? It's always claimed a victim. It's just about every single time you come here. It's how risky do you want to be? How late on the brakes? How much rotation? Do you think you can get back on the power early enough? And, well, who's going to have that big old tank slapper that becomes a wall slapper?
Yeah, exactly. This is the state of play coming into 2024. There's been quite a few changes behind the scenes for V8SCOPS. A new administration team, Oceanic Sim Racing, have handed over the reins to Aussie Online Gaming, as well as SimSpeed as well, staying in there, helping to organize the series and put everything together. The amount of drivers through a night has decreased as well. Used to be 2 splits of maximum 40 cars each. Now the grid size is down to 30. So that means that there's going to be some very hard competition to get into races every single time. Used to just be the split 2 winner that got to race in split 1 later in the night. Now it's the entire podium. So first, second, and third in the split 2 race coming up, you'll be able to see further action in split 1 if they choose to. And there's more pre-qualifying options plus real-world weather forecasts as well, which is definitely going to be interesting when rain eventually gets enabled for these cars.
Yeah, and that's only a week away, you know, for us to actually see the first inputs of what rain is like. Already in the background, I've started tinkering away. I'm working on trying to get a PC upgrade just to make sure I'm at the top end of things. I'm waiting to see how many chips get fried in the next week or so. Something to think about in the background, but what a calendar as well. From here onto Phillip Island on the 13th of March, the 14th of April takes us to Watkins Glen, another classic. Always going to have that one. Sonoma Cup. There was actually a race there just recently, and it was certainly an interesting one in terms of things. Watching the cars bounce over the curbs was lovely. I love Jerez. Jerez is just such a beautiful circuit to go to. Winton, it's on the calendar. I'm not a fan of Winton, and there'll be a lot of people who sit here, point fingers at me and go, oh, he's not a V8 supercar fan if he's not a fan of Winton. Belle Isle always makes for an interesting race. Interlagos is the same. Big fan of Interlagos. If there's a series, Interlagos is always the first track that goes on my calendar. Imola, Imola's also another one that I love quite well. Sandown, Bathurst, and Road Atlanta, and one to be confirmed track coming later on in the season. There's a few good tracks that, man, how good would it be to see Portimao as the last round?
Oh yeah, that'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? Now that it's been announced that Portimao is going to be coming to iRacing, I think depending on the release schedule, there's a fair chance it might be Pukekohe going into the end of the season. Of course, iRacing confirming last year that they were going to be scanning Pukekohe Park Raceway. But that is a debate for later on in the season. We got to focus on round one action in split 2. My apologies. We got a 26-lap race coming up, and it's going to be one compulsory pit stop between laps 2 and 24. Now, there was some discussion behind the scenes with the crew at Aussie Online Gaming. There's extra compulsory pit stop rules that AOG have brought in, and there's one that's been adapted from the Logitech Pro Invitational Series as well. So here's the extra details. The final lap for compulsory pit stop in either split is actually the penultimate lap for drivers who can stay on the lead lap. And if there is a safety car before the leader finishes lap 1, and this is the case in either split, if there's a safety car before the leader finishes lap 1, then the opening of the compulsory pit stop window is delayed until 1 lap after the restart. So that's something that the drivers will need to keep an eye out on. With 5 minutes left in practice, we'll be getting into this very shortly, Scott. And if there's one thing that Montreal is known for, it is for action. I think there's going to be a few drivers who won't be happy with their result coming out of this. This being the first round of a new season, everyone likes to be aggressive at round 1.
Well, just think about it. If something happens, drama happens further down the field, it's qualifying here, I think, is... Even though it's one of those tracks we definitely can get an overtake done, it's one of those tracks as well where I think qualifying is certainly more key than it normally is. Your runoff area is quite minimal, so should that drama happen, how often have we seen drama happen before we get to turn 1? Somebody doesn't get a good getaway, somebody spins tires, somebody just stalls their car. We saw that, I think it might have been SCOPS, or actually it might have been the Southern Cross series in the TCRs at Bathurst at that round. Somebody just stalled the car, didn't get away, somebody ran straight at the back of them. So in terms of things, that's an option that's sort of there, which is why qualifying is quite important here. It just keeps you out of that drama that happens early on in the race, sets you up quite nicely. And for the fans that are watching along at home and go, okay, well, safety car rules, how does that all work? Safety car comes out before the end of lap number 1, and let's say we go green at the end of lap of 3, start of lap number 4. That means the safety car, you cannot complete your compulsory pit stop until the end of lap 4. So we're going green at the end of lap 3, end of lap 4 you can come down to the pit lane. That'll clear that one up for a few people.
Yeah, exactly. The pit entry is major, and of course we have the new safety car, the Porsche Mission R, for this season, with some extra sponsorship on the car as well. We would like to thank the connections that have been made over the off-season to bring Proven Energy in as sponsor of the AOG SimSpeed safety car. It's obviously an electric machine, this one, decked out in Bowler Media decals as well. Dan Stevens is one of the OSR admin team that has stayed on from the previous season. He remains the safety car driver for this series. It'll be interesting to see his view of proceedings as things go around, depending on whether or not there's a huge incident at the start of lap 1, or at any point on any lap, really. That's the kind of track Montreal is. Just a couple of minutes left in practice, and Teo Sorono, the fastest car in the warm-up session, but the split 2 grid is set by pre-qualifying results. So the driver who pre-qualified in 33rd position is going to start on pole position for the race, and that is Blake Delaney in the Fishing Motorsports 08. Delaney currently in 8th on the timesheets right now and not doing any laps at the moment. I think he's just getting his eye in for what his race strategy is going to be.
Well, it's interesting because Blake could probably sit there, look at that, and be in split 2 and be at the front of split 2, and he'll go, I'm probably a little frustrated to not have that guaranteed slot in split number 1. And I know, he does quite a lot, and time might be a little bit tight for him in terms of things. So he might actually not elect to jump up and jump into split 1 later on tonight. Well, the key thing now is, okay, we've got one race, let's make it a good race. So it's automatically, let's start ticking off our boxes. Have I got the right setup on? Have I got the right fuel markers? What's my pit stop look like? Tick, 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 tick. It's all about checking all of those boxes off. All in procedures, make sure you get things right. So first and foremost, we'll make sure you've got that start procedure ready to go. Have I tested my clutches? Is everything ready to go? Did I get to the first corner? Is that first box that you want to check? Now I can cover that line for corner number 2. Look to get a really, really good drive off. So first and foremost, get a good drive off that line, and then just start checking boxes for that race and get your season underway.
Yep, exactly right. Well, we're seeing plenty of mistakes being made throughout the field in the warm-up session. It's always a good time to get your mistakes out of the way there. Adam Blocker for the Americans Down Under team, one of the few international entries in the series. Himself and Philip Kraus, always an interesting pairing to look out for in the Enduros that come later in the year. And always nice to see Adam out there strutting his stuff. Meanwhile, down into the final chicane, Horton and Matt Morris come. Now, pit entry here at Montreal, as Morris is demonstrating, very interesting. The braking zone for the pit entry is actually later than the braking zone for the final chicane, so that is something the drivers need to look out for. If they want to take their mandatory pit stop and they're in a pack of cars, they need to be careful not to hit their braking point for the pit lane while others are braking for the chicane. Otherwise, there's going to be a huge crash. It's something that we always have to keep in mind every time we come to Montreal. Well, that's the end of the practice session, everybody. And it is time to go through the grid for the first Split 2 race of V8SCOPS in 2024. Starting on pole position, of course, is Blake Delaney in the Fishy Motorsports 08. We've got Ewan Baker starting alongside him in car number 34. Ewan Baker doing very well in the practice session. He was second on the timesheets there as well, racing for Synergy Sim Racing. Ewan usually for Kiwi Sim Racing. Matt Morris, meanwhile, the Nero Power 966 starts out a third alongside Vermilion Motorsports as Connor Nixon. And then we got Ben Morris, Phase 4 Motorsport alongside JTIT Race on Oz. Justin Wallace at the wheel of the number 13. Thomas Freeman starts in 7th spot, going to 9.5 Sim Sports, with Jamie Dyke in the Fishy starting alongside him in car 080. Rounding out the top 10, we got Justin McLean for the RSW Graphics Racing Team, and Phoenix Racing Team's Tim Mulford rounding out the top 10.
Over the page to 11th and 12th is Michael Whiting for Fishy Motorsports, off alongside of James Chustinoff's BAR team car. 13th and 14th is going to be Tao Sorono. Probably been a little disappointed with that qualifying effort for Altus Australia, and Benjamin Smith in the B Electrical Race on Oz car. Moving back to 15th and 16th, it's Chris Miller and Colin Warwick on behalf of the Fishy Motorsports outfit, and Colin Warwick's playing Black Privateer outfit. And 17th and 18th is Michael Cracknell in the Synergy Sim Racing car, alongside of Joshua Horton's Vermilion Motorsports car. Finally, running out our second 10 on the grid is Zach McDonald in the 9.5 Sim Sports car, and Ty Delaney out of Fishy Motorsports. Adam Blocker is going to be 21st, off alongside of Tyler Blackburn in the Americans Down Under and Race on Oz cars. Michael Angus for Fishy Motorsports, off alongside of Joe Mahoney, who won the support category on Friday night. We'll be confident in that. Be Electrical Race on Oz car. We'll throw it to 24th and be 25th and 26th will be Christopher Island and Rick Sieber for Sim Rigs DPR and Frog Leap Juice Racing. 27th and 28th will be, I believe, Brock Mottershead and Jay Brazier in the next round of grid spots for 801 Sim Racing, and we'll get back to Matthew Scholes and David Coleman for the second of the 801 Sim Racing cars and Fishy Motorsports cars. And finally, the back rows of the grid is going to be Logan Barnett, Michael Stewart. We'll be definitely not happy with that qualifying effort. He's got a little bit more pace in terms of that one. I believe Jason Fewens is off the back. So here we go, boys.
Yes, indeed. Sorry about that. I forgot to unmute my mic to read off the last part of the grid. I started reading them off, and then I thought, oh, Scott's cutting me off. What's going on? Oh, I see. Well, we got that mistake out of the way right at the start of the season. But the grid time is just about over here. 3 minutes on the clock. And now it's up to Blake Delaney to get the start that he needs. This is going to be very fun indeed as the revs rise and we begin. We get ready to go for 2024 V8 SCOPS in Split 2. Green flag flies and we are away, and that's not a good initial getaway from Blake Delaney. Absolutely storming between them is Matt Morris, 3 wide for the lead on the way into turn 1. Delaney's got the inside, he'll get it. Matt Morris locking up and getting up into second as there's almost a half spin there from Ben Morris. As the rest of the field makes their way through turns 1 and 2. It's a big crush further back in the field. Morris 3 wide with Mulford and Justin Wallace as they make their way through the first of many chicanes on this lap. Blake Delaney has gotten away to a good start here. He's currently leading by a second over Matt Morris. Ewan Baker falling into 3rd spot as they get to the end of the first chicane section of the lap. Some puffs of smoke. It looks like a couple of drivers with issues, Colin Warwick and Joshua Horton, having to gather themselves up. And look at the simracing.com DPR car of Chris Ireland going through on the inside there. There's very tight quarters here on lap 1.
And then he nearly trips over the car that's alongside of him. That is going to trigger the first incident of the race. Round goes someone way deep in the pack, and they'll finally get an opportunity to rescue themselves for Josh Horton and the Vermilion Motorsports team, unfortunately dropping through the pack race. But that's just racing here. When you're 3 wide heading down that second chicane, drama is always going to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a big shame there. But it is on for these positions further on back. Ben Morris currently in 7th spot, and Tim Mulford and Justin Wallace trying to get a leg up on him going into the final chicane. But Morris just going to hold on to that slide. That's going to let Justin Wallace through at the end of lap 1. And look who's joined the party. Thomas Freeman, they're on the grass. Ben Morris goes spearing off the racetrack, gathers it up. Dangerous re-entry there on the inside of turn 1, and that has created chaos for the likes of Mulford in the RSW graphics car.
I think Tao Sorono was caught up in it as well, so that was just crazy. They went 3 wide right at the point where the track narrows.
Yeah, well, there was a very big run there, wasn't there? And unfortunately, that's put paid to any kind of gain of position for many of the drivers here. First replay of the night here. You'll see that, yeah, the 9.5 car tries to come through, but unfortunately not much he could have done there, and locking up on the way in, and that spun Mulford around. And a couple of cars having to take to the runoff area just to avoid all of that. Looks like one of the Banter Alliance cars of Chastener was involved there too.
I can tell you what, Reese, I was just having a quick look at a whole bunch of cars at that point in time. I saw about 6 slowdown penalties active just recently. So everyone is pushing those limits, looking to see if they can put themselves further and further out the grid early on this, and they're just coming a cropper in terms of where the track limits are. So, margins are being pushed, and they're being pushed quite excessively very, very early on.
Yeah, they definitely are. Ty Delaney for Fishy Motorsports currently looking back at the likes of Colin Warwick and Rick Sebra. This is the battle for 14th spot. A lot of positions gained here for these guys thanks to the incident at turn 1 the lap before, but there's no stopping Connor Nixon in 3rd spot. He is trying his best to get up to the back of Matt Morris and Blake Delaney at the front of this field. And unfortunately, it looks like Ewan Baker has suffered a slowdown. He has fallen down the field to 5th.
So what we were talking about was, just be a little bit conservative. Make sure you're ticking those boxes off. One of the key things early on in terms of a championship is make sure that you're just putting yourself in contention, giving yourself every opportunity to score points. I tell you what, Matt Morris has just gone for a huge slide coming up the second chicane, and it's still kicking off, I think, further down the field. Everyone's really not taking an opportunity to get the cars into themselves, get their race prep out of the way, settle in for a good run. It's about starting a championship strong, and I think this just that was too much curb there for Ewan Baker.
Yeah, instantly moves offline and gets on the brakes to clear the slowdown penalty. Meanwhile, the number 91 race on Oars entry with Adam Blocker just taps him onto the grass there. And I mean, there's no grip out there. If you make contact coming into turn 1, you better hope that the driver you slid around is a little bit better on the brakes than you are. Meanwhile,
was that a stalled engine too? I think that's the reason why the 81... Did you see the yellow light flashing on the rear bumper of that one? So he stalled it in that exchange.
Yeah, he did. Of course, V8SCOPS is run with no driver aids at all, including auto start. So, if you end up stalling the car, it's not going to get back started again unless you jump on the start button. Adam Blocker wasting no time trying to recover from that incident on the start-finish straight, making his way past Matthew Scholes. Zach McDonald is right with him here as well. Meanwhile, up the inside tries Michael Whiting on Scholes, but that's not going to work. Holds the inside, does the number 800. Beautiful run out of turn 2.
Yep, so everyone's just sort of taking stock of what's happened in those opening blows. Everyone's starting to realise the cars are all sort of... Yeah, they're still coming, man, thick and fast. It's, again, people just not settling themselves into the race properly. Just make sure, be a little bit circumspect at the moment. If you're in a good spot, I'd underdrive the car a fraction, look after everything, put myself in a really, really good spot at the back end, because we're already seeing people just everywhere. I've seen so many slowdown penalties handed out thus far.
Yeah, Montreal is notorious for its slowdown penalties, and that's ironic because it's a track where you need to make use of the curbs in order to be fast, but it's a very fine line you have to balance on. So Zach McDonald falling down to 23rd spot. He's got a lot of work to do in order to make his way back up. Might be hoping for a safety car, get a free pit stop out of the way. The lead, meanwhile, still under threat. Blake Delaney is holding on to a good lead, but second, third, and fourth going all over the curbs here at the final chicane. Matt Morris facing off against Connor Nixon. He's going to move across here. Nixon sees the door open to the inside at turn 1, but he's not far enough alongside to commit to the move. Has to stay behind a little longer. And Jamie Dyke is right with them here as well. Dyke made his way up from 8th spot. Meanwhile, here's Joe Mahoney making a move as James Chastaneuf makes contact. And around the car goes there. And oh dear, that's Mottershead, unfortunately. Brock Mottershead trying to reverse out of the way, but there were cars taking the racing line around him there. Very unfortunate.
Well, Reese, that was actually Michael Whiting on the outside of that incident, and Michael Whiting was trying to clear a slowdown penalty by going the long way around, which meant that he lost the minimum amount of time. So he was trying to really cheekily, it's nearly the, can you clear that penalty strategically? And it was just wrong place, wrong time, because if he wasn't necessarily on the outside, they probably would have gotten away with that one. That last little bit of contact finished him off. So again, like I said, experienced drivers, experienced heads, and there's a lot of them in this field as well. All of them start to fall a little bit foul. The other one I'm sort of keeping an eye on is this battle up for second place, because I think it's actually just resulted in an overtake at this point in time. Nixon's just got through.
He has indeed, and all of that back and forth has given Blake Delaney a huge lead of 2 seconds now. So there's no stop, and Blake Delaney at the front of this field, side by side between Morris and Dyke. Jamie Dyke is on an absolute charge right now. And that's right across the runoff area for Matt Morris. That'll be a huge slowdown, and he'll have to give up that position to Ewan Baker, I think, if he can't clear it in time. But what a race from Dyke so far. Started in 8th and could be looking at a second place finish here if things all stay the same.
Well, him and Blake Delaney work together really, really well as teammates too. So been a lot of communication there. I haven't seen Jamie in the sim. He hasn't been doing as many hours as he would have liked, and his issues are just going to continue to mount as the night goes on. So this for me is sort of him trying to get himself back into the rhythm of things, really trying to turn that switch back on. Now there was a report from Matt Morris. He wasn't happy with the way the move was done down at the hairpin. So Race Control are going to have a look at that one at this point in time, and this will be an interesting one to watch.
All right, so keep an eye on Matt Morris and the Mustang. Up the inside goes Connor Nixon, and there was a tap. Morris was forced wide there at the hairpin. A little bit of biff and barge, which is what you'd expect from touring car racing, but we'll leave it up to Race Control to decide whether or not that is worth a penalty. Meanwhile, car number 23, Chris Ireland, a driver that has been around for a very long time, looking for a move here on Michael Angus. Ben Morris is the next car up ahead of them in 9th place. Not much to be done here at the hairpin. Too far back to get the move done, but you get on the power, and if you can take a slightly wider line, as Michael Angus just did, you'll get some great momentum out of the corner there for the run onto the back stretch, coming to the final chicane. Very important indeed. It's lap 6 now. We are well within the pit stop window, but no one is deciding to come into the pits just yet. This being a 26-lap race, you don't want to get on a fresh set of tyres too early, as these cars are notorious for burning through the optimum grip phase of these tyres.
Well, the other problem I think, Reese, at the moment is that the field is sort of stretched out just enough that if you were to pit right now, with the pace of the guys down towards the tail end of the field, you'd be on them. So I think what's going to happen is the guys at the front are going to wait for a little bit of a window to sort of open up. Jay Brazil, this is actually a penalty, the iRacing penalty for cutting the course. I think it was the section between turns 1 and 2 where he sort of shot across to try and get out of the way. But there was some debate about that because he was avoiding an incident. Well, you've still got to follow the rules, and well, he come a cropper of iRacing's rules. He saved his car, but he's destroyed his race.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for Jay Brazier. He's going to have to hope for a miracle to try and get all of those positions back. We'll keep an eye here on the fight for second spot. Connor Nixon now up into that position, chased down by Jamie Dyke, who's continuing on his hard charge here. The Fishy Motorsports cars are looking very quick indeed at this first round of the championship. But there's nothing that Dyke can do apart from sit in the slipstream and hope that he can gain a little more here on Connor Nixon coming into the final chicane. All about avoiding the wall of champions from here. This is one of the most spectacular spots to watch V8 touring cars, because look at how much they mount those curbs. It's incredible to see them hop over them, but that can introduce a little bit of instability in the car. Meanwhile, this fight a little further back.
I was just going to say, this fight a touch down the field, and the other thing was that I just noticed is this fractionally different line being taken by Dyke and Nixon. There's not much in it, but I believe Dyke takes a little bit more of the first curb on the right, and Nixon takes a little bit more of the second curb. So, you know, a little bit better entry speed from Nixon, a little bit worse on the exit speed in terms of things. So Dyke's best opportunity might be down at turn number 1. That'll be something to stick in the brain and sort of think about it. But check out the battles up and down the field. It's so tight. We've sort of got the front 7, and then there's a hole, and then there's just a huge pack just after those guys. So I think all night long, and you know, supercars racing tends to be good. I think it's going to be out in spades for this one, Reese.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love this series. I've been here since the very start, and it has never failed
Nixon, slow
to provide
down.
plenty of action and drama. Oh no, Connor Nixon picking up a slowdown through the second last of the chicanes here, has to give up the position to Dyke on the way into the hairpin, and this gives an extra chance here for Ewan Baker to try and make good on his second place start.
Still hasn't cleared it. Still hasn't cleared it. Still hasn't cleared it. Now it's done. So now he's got not a great drive off of that corner, and that'll give Ewan every opportunity to try and get up in it a little bit closer. I reckon Nixon wasn't wriggling around. Dyke was definitely wriggling around a little bit. I'm wondering whether Nixon's leaning on those front tyres just a little bit. His balance through the corner is quite good, and the way that he's picking up the throttle. But then again, look, more first curve that time through for Nixon. Really poor exit. He's at threat down here at turn 1.
He is indeed. This is how the incident happened. Just too much curb there at the first apex. Got onto the grass, and here comes Baker. Oh, no! On the outside, coming into the first proper corner of the lap. Seems to me like he was trying to fire it towards the inside there, but Connor Nixon holding his line on the way into the first turn, and that has spun Ewan Baker around, giving him a further slowdown. Baker's all the way back down to 7th.
Oh man, he was just recovering. He really settled himself down in and was driving quite well. In fact, he looked nearly like he was the most potent of that front group. Yeah, Dyke looked quick, but Ewan Baker was sort of my target. And there's more drama down at turn 1.
Oh, Mahoney, winner of the Split 2 race, winner of the V8 support category race on Friday, and that's a big spin for him. We've had 4 drivers or actually 3 taking a scheduled pit stop, it seems. Teo Sorono, Josh Horton, and Brock Mottershead all making their way into the lane. Here's the view of what happened to Mahoney. Got the 666 up alongside him, and that was just a solid whack around. Now, the 666 is driven by, Chris Miller. So, who knows? There might be a penalty coming Chris Miller's way after that.
Well, I was looking at that one, and from that angle, it's not a great angle, but my first thoughts on that one, Reese, is I reckon Joe's probably not left him enough space. So I wonder whether or not that might be a self-penalising incident. Race control might not touch it. He hasn't actually called that one in, so there's no report for them to chase that up at this point in time based upon what I've heard. So I guarantee Joe's looked at that and gone, yeah, I squeezed him a little bit too much there. That one's on me. I'll just wear it.
And meanwhile, Tyler Blackburn just got tapped around by Ben Morris there coming into the final chicane. So that's unfortunate once again for Blackburn. Chris Miller, meanwhile, continuing his charge and trying to chase down Matt Scholes here. This is quite the interesting fight here, and this is only for 17th spot as Thomas Freeman brings the 9.5 car in for that. Meanwhile, penalty coming in for Ben Morris for contact with the 495 of Thomas Freeman on lap 2. And who knows, maybe he'll have another penalty hanging over his head after what we just saw.
It was a warning sent out to Chris Miller as well for an unsafe rejoin on lap 2. So there was, all of that stuff that we saw down at turn number 1 was an interesting one. Anyway, in the means of things, remember how I was talking a little bit earlier about the guys at the front, if they pit now, they're sort of going to come out in traffic and really can't show that turn of speed. We're starting to see a couple guys, and Freeman was one of those who was a little bit further back. So this is the incident giving us a different shot.
Oh, yeah, the door was closing.
So he's still up alongside, still required to leave racing room, and Joe's just turned in a fraction. There's not much in that, but again, that's on Joe, and he's just gone, yep, that's on me. I turned in a fraction early. Let's leave that alone.
It's the nature of the track too at turns 1 and 2, isn't it? Because the line flows right into turn 2. Oh, here we go. That's the the penalty being taken for the number 43. Meanwhile, a warning to Chris Miller for unsafe rejoin of Ty Delaney on lap 2. Chris Ireland, I think this is a scheduled pit stop here. Bunch of cars from the midfield making their way into the lane here. Looks like they've found a gap, and they'll try and undercut those ahead of them. If you put fresh tyres on these cars, it's worth about a second or more in terms of pace around a track like this. So if you're down in the field, your best shot at moving up in the short term is to take your pit stop a little earlier.
Well, it's about doing what you can. Remember, the way that I like to think about it, Reese, is if I'm not having a great day, if I feel a little bit stuck in the water, one of the things that I can do as a driver is I'd like to grab a hold. I'd love to get two hands on the strategy, wrestle it my way. And Ewan Baker's another one that I'd like to see sort of think about his strategy. A little bit of clear track around him at the moment. So what can you do? One of the things you can do is undercut. The other thing you can do is overcut. For Ewan, he can go the opposite way. He's got a little bit of room ahead of him. If he tags on the back, I'd like to see Justin McLean go to the lane this lap. See if he can try and get an undercut. That's going to trigger a bunch of pit stops. McLean's the next car up ahead of Ewan Baker. So some things to sort of think about in the back end of your mind. The other thing is if you're Ewan Baker right now, you've got a really clean run into that pit lane. So you can really attack that braking zone. So this will be an opportunity. Think about the strategy from his point of view. His rear tyres will be extremely hot. He's had a bunch of slides throughout this run. He's a bunch of contact. This would be an opportunity to get my hair down, just wrestle this race and bring it back under my control, see what I can throw at these guys, because I think the longer this runs out, he's just going to be in a little bit of a hole where he is.
Yeah, I think one advantage that he does have is the gap, actually, and I'll explain that because, it's the nature of the pit entry, right? If you're very close up behind other cars, Michael Angus, meanwhile, overshooting his box there, that's going to cost him a lot of time. If you're someone like Justin McLean, and you're chasing down Justin Wallace for the last position in the top 5, there's not enough of a gap there that you'd be able to maximize the entry into the pit lane, because remember, it's on the same line as the braking zone for the final chicane. So someone like Baker probably has an advantage there. He can gain quite a bit of time by braking very late for pit entry.
But the problem is, if the cars ahead of him come to the lane this next time by, he's a little bit close whereby he won't be able to gain everything. He will gain some because there's still some room to get in there, but judging it's definitely very, very difficult. The other problem is Brazier, after serving that penalty, has come out in between Blake Delaney and Jamie Dyke. So Dyke was the quickest car that last lap. Still a fair bit of pace. If Brazier sort of gets caught here, I want to see him sidestep. I'd really like to see Dyke come back and have a go at Blake Delaney. They always say the fishy cars. There's no team orders at Fishy Motorsports, and I'm still yet to find proof of that, but one day I will.
Yeah, of course. Well, look at that. Race leader is in the lane. Blake Delaney's decided to take his pit stop at the end of lap 12, and following him in, Connor Nixon, Matt Morris, Jamie Dyke staying out for another lap, wondering if that's going to gain him an advantage. Morris and Baker also following in our former race leader.
Well, I think Nixon was very, very tight on getting underneath that pit lane limit. And there's another couple of mistakes. McLean's just picked up himself a slowdown penalty somewhere. So as he shoots through, he's going to have to give up some time. That means Baker for sure will clear him. But I thought for sure Nixon was just about to get himself a penalty for entering too hot. He's got away with that one, but he was all kinds of locked up on the way in there, Reese. Yeah, interesting one. These guys are pushing it quite hard.
They are indeed. Blake Delaney's already back out on the racetrack, meanwhile, leader of the cars that have pitted with a slightly longer pit stop than that of Connor Nixon and Matt Morris. Delaney spent 16 seconds stopped in the box, and meanwhile Nixon and Morris 13 and 14 seconds respectively. So that's interesting. Wondering whether or not it was a slight problem for Blake Delaney in the lane, or if he was just taking it easy.
Well, I mean, he had sort of 2 seconds worth to play with and be a little bit safe in terms of his strategy. Maybe a fractionally lighter car. I don't expect that to be the case, but that could have been one of the reasons that it was. But yeah, I mean, look, if you've got a margin, Reese, and you just want to make sure that you just drive the bus home. Blake Delaney is one of those guys who's really, really accurate with everything he does. Yes, certainly quick, but he's just accurate. He's one of those drivers who'll just harass and harangue you. He won't make anything untoward happen, won't throw everything at you just to see what happens, but he's so clean, he's so consistent, he hits those marks so often. Again, the guy's unlikely to make a mistake, so I would think that's probably just him just being a little bit conservative in terms of things. Ewan Baker, by the way, came out of that pit stop in traffic. He's just cleared Tim Melford now, but that's ruined his outlap.
Yeah, we saw a glimpse of that earlier on in the lap, and meanwhile, the rest of the field steadily making their way into the lane. There goes Blake Delaney, resuming the overall race lead. Justin Wallace, Jamie Dyke, Justin McLean, Tyler Blackburn all making their way into the pit lane. And Jamie Dyke has lost out in that pit cycle. That extra lap spent on the slightly more worn tyres has cost him 2 spots, back down into 4th. But he's on the fresh tyres now, and he could get it done here. David Coleman has not pitted there. That was for position, but it's a car that's pitted versus a car that's not. And now Dyke, with the 1 lap fresher tyres, could have a big go at Connor Nixon.
Well, I mean, he's lost track position. This is one of those old heads versus young heads. Yeah, Nixon's very, very young in terms of things, but he's got a real good race brain on him, whereas Dyke's just got the experience. Connor's been coming at him slowly, steadily over the last sort of 18 months or so, building his pace, building his racecraft, building his abilities to really punch forward in this car. I've seen him go from strength to strength probably about the last 6 months. He's really, really found himself. Well, he's about to have one of the biggest challenges you can possibly have. Earlier on in the race, got the slowdown penalty, lost it. I think Jamie Dyke will harass and harangue him, and I think we'll see Nixon make another mistake, and that's how we'll get by.
Yeah, big potential there. Meanwhile, Ewan Baker getting chased down by Justin McLean. Tim Mulford, remember, has not come into the lane yet. The Phoenix Motorsports driver is waiting just a little longer to get his pit stop down and off the board. There goes Jamie Dyke past Connor Nixon. And that was coming into the final chicane there. That was looked like a nice slipstream move, it seems.
Pulled out late, ton of overspeed too. Very, very late to get that one done. That was bravery, utter bravery.
Yeah, certainly was. Jamie Dyke knows what he wants out of this race. It started with a great exit out of the hairpin. Extra traction on slightly fresher tyres, and drew alongside into the braking zone, moved across onto the racing line by the time they got to the corner, but looks like he had enough space to do that. So Fishing Motorsports 1-2 at the front of this field. So
I think we might have a stranded car.
We do.
Michael Whiting. So he's not stranded, but something's going on. There's been contact for sure.
Yeah, down in 25th position now, and that car looks very sorry indeed. He was a long way up the field at the start of this lap. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on Ty Delaney here. In the... it's Ben Morris. Okay, so not the first time we've seen Ben Morris make contact with another car and switch him around in the braking zone of a corner. And that was at turn 1. Always difficult when you've got drivers bearing to the right. Oh,
Jamie Dyke got a slowdown penalty this lap. So I was just about to say, rookie versus the stalwart. Well, it's actually the stalwart that's made the mistake. And the other thing I was going to say, Reese, was I've heard of 2 birds, 1 stone, but never 2 fish, 1 stone.
Yeah, it's probably two fish, 1 rod. I don't know. We'll workshop that. Chase says his name's Ben, not Rod. Oh dear, it's started already. Well, take 2 then. Can Jamie Dyke make his way past Connor Nixon on this lap? Nice gentle exit out of this chicane will bring lots of benefits. You have to lift off just a little bit, maybe tap the brakes to keep the weight on the fronts through this section of the circuit. That corner's flat out in a Formula 1 car, certainly not in a V8 touring car. And look at the exit there for Nixon. He was able to maximize that beautifully. Jamie Dyke, I think, maybe a little bit rattled by the slowdown that he got, and he would have gotten it here at this chicane, which is very easy. You just got to tap those white anti-cut curbs. Can't go completely over them. Otherwise, you will get the penalty. And now it's up to the hairpin to get the move done, but he's too far back. Meanwhile, behind them, Matt Morris, defensive versus David Coleman, who, once again, still hasn't come into the lane for his stop. He and Tim Mulford are the only drivers that haven't visited the pit lane yet.
What do they gain now? That really nothing. And for David Coleman, he's just out here having fun. For Coleman, he started from pit lane, so not the greatest night. Don't think he knew that he was in the show until very, very late on. And yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, that
keeps
it is.
Himself competitive, keeps himself in contention, makes his race exciting. I think that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, just have a bit of fun. Of course, David Coleman, a very good driver in his own right. He competed in the NTE series last year and certainly brought the fight to many of the drivers in that series. Tim Mulford, meanwhile, decides to throw up the flag and take his pit stop. Be interesting to see where he spits out in the order. He's probably looking at finishing outside the top 20 at this stage, but we will have to wait and see. This battle's still going on for second spot. Connor Nixon versus Jamie Dyke has been the race of the race so far, I would say. Blake Delaney just too far ahead for anyone to do anything about it. It's nearly 5 seconds in front. Yeah,
so again, just showed a clean pair of heels early, and when all the drama unfolded in behind him, he just allowed him to just keep stretching it. Longer pit stop, but he's done a really, really good job. In terms of things, I'm just watching the exit sort of off turn 7, which is that run down underneath the bridge into that second chicane. And for me, Jamie Dyke, the whole race, has had a lot of problems getting the power down. I've seen him having to correct and get a lot of opposite lock going through there. So I think he's just really, really weak in that traction zone in particular. And there's not much he can really do about it. If Nixon was behind him, he'd give him a hurry up right through there. So right as they stand, whereas he's just got, it's the gearing ratio on this car. He's got a slightly taller gearing ratio, and it's for that spot right there. It's the only spot I think he's really going to be able to get that car going. And whatever Nixon's doing, like I said, the cars are set up very, very different, and they're driving very different, and they're still setting nearly identical lap times. That's what we love.
Yeah, it's a very tight competition here. No room to get up the inside at Senna. The second proper turn of the lap, slightly narrower exit for Jamie Dyke, but it's not bringing him any benefit for the time being. I think what he's going to have to rely on is a mistake under acceleration from Connor Nixon. You see just how much of the curbs these drivers are using. You need to do that at Montreal. That's where the pace is. But as I said earlier, a very fine line you have to tread. It's either that or a slowdown. So Connor Nixon has the fastest lap of the race so far, 1 minute 35.2, but he's running 0.2 slower than Jamie Dyke right now as we get the second penalty for Ben Morris. That's for the contact with Michael Whiting that we saw at turn 1 a couple of laps ago. So race control right on that as per usual. That's a big defense there, and look
is
who
that a
it's
slowdown?
bringing in. I don't know.
That looks
was
like a
interesting.
slowdown being cleared because Nixon was on the brakes mega early. How he didn't end up with a Jamie Dyke-sized hole punched in his rear bumper, I have no idea. This is going to be exciting. All of a sudden, this has broken out. There's 4 cars in this now.
Yeah, good heads-up driving, I think, from Jamie Dyke to not run into the back of him. But like you say, it has brought in loads of other cars as David Coleman finally shoots into the pit lane and clears the whole field of the compulsory pit stop requirement. So this gives a second chance here to Matt Morris for a run at a podium position. 3-car fight, and on the outside looking in is Justin Wallace, who's continuing to make up time. It is a 4-car fight now. Here's the onboard from Jamie Dyke down the bottom of the screen, Scott. Now, did he get on the brakes early for the hairpin? He did.
Way too early.
Oh, yeah. And he went down to the inside. I think that was tactical. He knew that that Dyke was going to go for the inside there, so might as well protect him.
Well, it's just covered the whole track. I mean, that's the smart part about it, is he's covered the whole track. Now, on the defense, if I was in Jamie's shoes, that fires me up right there, because I think that's just a little bit on the nose. I wouldn't necessarily be the most happy with it, but he's got away with it. And the thing about Jamie Dyke is he's very quiet. He'll work away, he'll work away, he'll work away. Those sorts of things, he's not flustered. He doesn't get flustered very, very easily. So he'll be like, yeah, that's on the edge, but it's okay. Well, it's play on, it's line ball. And have a look. The braking marker difference this time by, so something happened for Nixon. That's not normal what he did on that last lap, and there was something in that. I have a sneaking suspicion it was a slowdown penalty, but I got nothing to back it up with, Reese.
Well, yeah, it was suspiciously early on the brakes, wasn't it? I think he might have got a small slowdown at the chicane preceding the corner. So we'll keep an eye on that for the time being. Right now, it is Blake Delaney, Connor Nixon, and Jamie Dyke who are eligible to move up into Split 1 later on tonight. But Matt Morris could have a go here. It wasn't the best of exits from the final chicane for him, though. He's going to have to hope that these two fight hard and slow each other up. Morris not only has to deal with that, but also Justin Wallace behind him. And look who's starting to make up time on them. Ewan Baker in the Synergy number 34. He's in frame now.
Was that the Jaws theme song I just heard you playing, Reese, in the background? Because Dun it, Ewan Baker is here. He's chomping at the bit, and I guarantee you, if there's a driver that likes to get a little bit fiery, likes to get a little bit fired up, it's Ewan Baker. But I tell you what, he drives better. I like a Ewan Baker with a little bit of red mist. He does drive a little bit better out of it. So when he gets here, it's going to be aggressive. He took 0.3 of a second out of Justin Wallace in the first sector of this lap. He's going to get here. It's going to be late in this race, and it's going to be tight for him to get there, but he's going to get there.
Yeah, for sure he is. There's 7 laps to go at the moment, coming up to 6 laps to go once Delaney comes across the line. Teo Sorono, meanwhile, massive slowdown penalty there. And that's very unfortunate for the Triple Eight. Sorono topping practice, and he's actually going off the track. Maybe this isn't a slowdown. Potentially this might be a hardware issue or something to that effect.
Is he stuck in 6th gear?
No, that's he's in 4th gear right now. That number 6 is a sticker on the dash. So he's up into 6 now. Has he not fueled the car enough? He might have started with qualifying fuel. What's going on with Teo Sorono?
I think you're right about fuel. It's definitely fuel related. Whether or not, if he started this thing with 111 litres on it, I reckon he might be just about out.
Look at this. Jamie Dyke and Matt Morris side by side. Morris having a proper go at him now. That's allowed Connor Nixon to break away from this fight. And Ewan Baker sees all of this happening ahead of him, and I think a smile would be creeping onto his face. Dyke is now massively defensive versus Matt Morris. Something's gone on for the 080.
Whether or not he just didn't have a great exit, and all of a sudden that's allowed Morris to get right up onto him. Somebody's saying it was the Wall of Champions, that Dyke had a huge moment in Wall of Champions.
Yeah, he did. It was a big oversteer moment, and Morris took advantage, but Dyke managing to make his way back past. It is now a 4-car fight for 3rd here, with Connor Nixon skipping away.
Well, he's got no toe. He's got no toe now, so he won't be able to get that overspeed. One of the big things about Jamie Dyke has been the overspeed when we get down to the end of this straight right here. And this time by, he's not going to have a toe. So the problem is, he's going to have a real problem getting this car to wind up. He's going to be slow off the corner. So the reason to go this setup and go this route in terms of things was to get the overspeed. But when you don't get a toe, when you don't get a draft, when you're ahead of a train, that makes you just that little bit more vulnerable on the way through the gears. And I tell you what, Morris is right there, so he cannot afford another mistake. And I said, he's hungry. He's back in the sim. He wants something out of it. He's a stalwart. Well, this is just very un-Jamie Dyke-like tonight, if I'm going to be honest here, Reese.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a different driver to just a couple of laps ago, right? I mean, Dyke was all over the back of Connor Nixon earlier on in the race, but now he's got some trouble, and that's in the form of Ewan Baker, I think, from what you're saying there, Scott. If I'm picking up what you're putting down, he's right with them now.
I tell you what, break out the donuts, ladies and gentlemen. A Baker has arrived.
All right, let's see if he can make it a Baker's dozen of positions recovered. Let's see then. Delaney still under no pressure at the front of this field. It's all going on behind. What can Ewan Baker do to fire something into this fight? Jamie Dyke has not been able to break away from Matt Morris after his unfortunate slide at the final chicane. The exit of the hairpin is where the money is made. He's getting closer and closer. Who gets the best exit? Dyke tries to straighten it up as soon as he can, and he does get better traction on the exit, but you see that he's already trying to break the draft here.
I think he's got to. I think he's got it through the first phase of the story. Morris is just not chasing him. He's not interested in the toe, which is really interesting. I think he'd be a little bit closer, a lot more putting some pressure, maybe a couple little nudges, just wrap out, some Morse code on his rear bumper. But Dyke was a lot better through the Wall of Champions that time. And I tell you what, if anyone out of this group looks close to even getting a job done, it'll be Ewan Baker. And like I said, fired up. He's had a couple times tonight where mistakes have been made. He's had a little bit of a rub, a little bit of contact, and he's popped out the other side. I think Wallace is in trouble.
Oh, yeah. Justin Wallace, definitely. He'll be looking in his mirrors every single lap here. And what's interesting is Wallace actually pitted a lap earlier than Ewan Baker, so technically his tyres should be in slightly better shape. But maybe he was driving a bit too hard to try and keep up with the likes of Matt Morris and Jamie Dyke. Ewan Baker, on the other hand, consistency, getting his head screwed back on after his unfortunate runnings earlier. Meanwhile, Benjamin Smith escaped without permission on the 21st lap. That's going to be 5 license points for him. And meanwhile, Matt Morris, Jamie Dyke contact at turn 2 is going to be a post-race investigation. That's interesting, because I didn't really see much in that incident when it happened, but evidently race control have deemed it worth looking at.
I think there's a few things that they're looking at the moment, and I don't know about some... Did you say it was Benjamin Smith? Because I saw him leave the server due to packet loss, so I don't know whether that might have been a tow without permission. So he did alter. Okay, so it was actually a tow without permission. It was a mechanical tow without permission. Trying to get around those rule sets. It's been noted by race control. So yeah, they're at least keeping an eye on things. But yeah, that's an interesting one. I agree with you. I didn't see any contact between them. That's good hard racing.
Yeah, indeed. Well, this is what happened. This is how it happened. So. It was on the exit, apparently. Oh, a little bit of a tap there. And that sent Morris a little wide. I don't know. That doesn't seem like much of a muchness to me.
That's racing. Yeah, if you're not coming to play with V8s and you're not going to do a crisscross like that where there's millimeters in it. I mean, if he gets straightened out and, there's a little bit more in it, but there was not much in that. I wouldn't even touch it.
Yeah, well... We are up in the commentary box. We have no influence on the results here. Race control are the ones in the box doing all of that hard work, and we do appreciate it. Of course, it doesn't mean that we can't make our own interpretations of the action out here. I'll tell you what, Connor Nixon has slowed down a little bit. And I don't mean a slowdown. I mean his pace has just dropped off. He ran 5/10 slower than Jamie Dyke and Matt Morris on the previous lap. So this battle for second has come alive again, this time with 5 cars involved. Oh, that's way too deep there for Ewan Baker. He turns around Matt Morris, and the battle is destroyed. What on earth happened to Ewan Baker there?
Word. something happened. I have no idea whether or not he was forced off line. Would be, you know, whether or not Justin's defended a little bit outrageously, but he's too far back.
No, yeah, too far back. I think he might have just missed the braking point. So everyone gets on the brakes there. Is it a lockup? What on earth has gone on there?
He's not locked up. I wonder whether or not there was a hardware failure or some description on the braking pedal.
Yeah.
It couldn't reach peak pressure until late on for some reason.
Yeah, that's very strange for Ewan Baker. Well, it's brought the battle for second alive again, because up the inside on the exit goes Jamie Dyke. Connor Nixon back to third, and this time they have no other cars to spoil the party.
My word, this race has just exploded. Somebody's just thrown a grenade underneath the bus here. Yeah, he's not pulling up. Something's wrong there. Whether or not he can't downshift? Do you reckon it might be engine braking?
Maybe. That's potentially it. Maybe his paddle or gear shifter just wasn't sending the signal to the sim like he wanted it to. Let's keep an eye here on the dash. This will tell the full story. He'll get on the brakes at the same time as everyone else. And
he couldn't downshift. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
So what? For those of you that are watching along at home and going, why does that matter? The supercars rely for peak braking efficiency and where he would normally. The problem is, once he's hit the brake, it's already too late. So if he's braking at his normal point and he's slammed on the brake, and all of a sudden the engine braking's not kicking in, doesn't matter. It's too late. There's nothing you can do about it from there. He's just a passenger. Does it look bad? Yep, sure, it does look bad, but you've got to be able to get through those gears. He just could not get through them. He's tried a couple of times. He's had a couple whacks at getting through the gears. It just didn't work.
Yeah, that's a real shame. And unfortunately, it's taken two other cars with him. Well, white flag in split 2. Blake Delaney in the lead by nearly 6 seconds now. And could there be one final run here from Connor Nixon to get it done? Jamie Dyke with the tyre advantage here, having pitted a lap later than Mr. Nixon running behind him. He does have a little bit more to play with here on the final lap, but could there be a final dive from Connor to try and nab second?
I think he'll be okay with that. Last lap, where the race is laid out, where everything's gone, if he was going to be able to take this one out, he should have held on to it a couple of laps ago. So realistically, he's thereabouts. Like, again, drive off. It had to be that corner if he was going to get drive off and be close enough. I think he's just going to sit there and just go, yeah, let's just not pick up a slowdown penalty on this last lap, because look how short the run is to the flag as well. There was a vets race with John Latham, got a penalty on the last lap at Magny Core, and just didn't have the time to clear the slowdown penalty coming through the final chicane. So for me, I just say, look, this one's probably done. Let's just make sure we don't get that penalty, and we don't get a 40-second penalty for getting a penalty on the last lap.
Yeah, well, either way, it's the podium that transfer through to split 1, so both Dyke and Nixon are safe where they are. But last corner here for Blake Delaney. There's going to be one final run from Connor Nixon at second. Blake Delaney out of the final corner to cross the line. Beautiful win to kick off the split 2 season. And Jamie Dyke will join him to lead home. Affishi Motorsport 1-2. Vermilion Motorsports getting onto the podium with Connor Nixon. That was a fantastic fight between those two all race long. It's still on for the minor positions in the top 10 here, with the 2:05 of Michael Angus holding off James Chastaneuf right at the death of it. Tyler Blackburn recovering from his earlier problems to finish in 11th spot, though losing 3 on the way there. Racing still going on here. This is for 19th. Ben Morris has to give up 19th to... Ben Morris has to give it up to Ty Delaney. Mulford with a little bit of issues there. Matt Scholes, meanwhile, he had to really get off the power to deal with that Phoenix number 85, and that's going to end things there for the majority of the field. Brock Mottershead is going to be one of the last cars to cross the line here, with Joshua Horton just crossing the line ahead of him. But what a win for Blake Delaney. Aside from a couple of problems early on, he just looked untroubled all race long.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy, isn't it? When there's no one really clambering over you, forcing you into mistakes and forcing you to cover lines. It does look a little bit easy, but 5.5 seconds doesn't really tell that story. It was such a good race for that second through sort of 6 spots. And Ewan Baker will sit there, look back at 7th and go, man, I think that's the one that just got away.
Yeah, indeed. Chris Ireland, Michael Angus and James Chastaneuf will round out the top 10 there. Remember, Delaney, Dyke and Nixon have the option of racing in Split 1 later on if they so desire. Moving on to outside the top 10, Blackburn finishing in 11th place with Thomas Freeman in 12th. And Thomas, I don't think will be too happy with that. The 9.5 car definitely had some problems, including contact with other cars that put him down the order. Chris Miller is going to finish in 13th ahead of David Coleman, who was the last car to take his compulsory pit stop. Cracknell, McDonald, Seabrard, Delaney, Morris and Mulford will round out the top 20.
Yeah, we'll throw it over the page to 21st and on back. It'll be Colin Warwick in that privateer, Matthew Sculls, Michael Whiting, Logan Barnett, Joe Mahoney will be disappointed with that result as well. Josh Horton, Brock Mottershead, Jay Brazier, who had that penalty early on, and 2 drivers finishing at 6 laps down with Benjamin Smith and Tao Serrano and Adam Blocker, 13 laps off the pace in terms of things, which would have been disappointing for the American participating across the pond. But boy, oh boy, that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely it was. Well, we have time for one driver interview, and it's going to be the race winner, Blake Delaney. Big congratulations, Blake, leading home for Fishy Motorsports 1-2. That is some magnificent running there for you guys.
Yeah, cheers, mate. I missed the start of that, but thanks very much. It was an awesome race. We had a good setup. Boys all ran pretty well. Congratulations to Jamie and Connor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It did seem like things were a bit dramatic early on there, but once the battle behind started, you ended up extending that gap. The car must have felt good.
Yeah, as the stint went on, the car was pretty good. I don't know what happened at the start there. Someone got a rocket start. I think it was Matt Morris, and I saw him late and moved towards the inside, and then almost shut the door on him. So lucky enough to get a later braking into turn 1, which got us into the lead early. So yeah, setup was awesome. Shout out to the boys over at Phoenix. They do an awesome setup, so really appreciate that one.
All right, thanks very much for joining us, Blake. Anyone else you'd like to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to all the Fishy boys, really appreciate everything that everyone does. Our main sponsors, and I've just lost the list. Our main sponsors are West End Motor Group, Infinity Designs, DC Shays, Battery Warehouse, Early Beach, and Precision Sim Training. Thanks very much, boys.
Thanks very much, Blake Delaney, race winner for the Split 2 event here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Well, we're going to say goodbye to you, Scott, and bring Ryan Jones in shortly for the Split 1 action. But what a way to kick off the V8SCOPS season.
Oh, yeah, that was action-packed, wasn't it? And I know Ewan will sit there and he'll just go, man, I'm not happy with that drive. Obviously, everything that kicked off. Normally, he manages those sorts of incidents quite well, but didn't quite manage it there tonight then.
Well, that's going to bring Split 2 action to a close, but there is still plenty of racing to come in Split 1. Stay with us here on SimSpeed TV for round 1 of the 2024 V8SCOPS season.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
You're watching SimSpeed TV, the first round of V8 SCOPS for 2024 here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. What a race it was in Split 2. We've got plenty more to come here in Split 1, the 199th Split 1 event in V8 SCOPS history. Next one will be the grand old 200. Looking forward to that. Bringing it to you all live, of course, here on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick. It's me, Reese Gardner, with Ryan Jones jumping in to join me for Split 1. Jay Kennedy, of course, once again on the producer's chair, pushing all the buttons. Ryan, it's been a while since we commentated together, probably on the somewhere in the realm of a few weeks at least, but we are back. And you can give me a little bit of insight because you attempted to qualify for this event.
I did attempt to qualify for this event, and I did not make it.
There was an attempt.
I was very, very slow. It's a very, very competitive field. It was something like 1.4 seconds covering P1 to P62. It's a condensed field this year, but I think it's made it even more competitive here in Split 1, which, let's lay it out, I was never a chance for. There is a lot of extremely talented drivers.
Yeah, indeed. Everyone's pulled out all the stops here for the opening round of the season. Of course, one of the elements of it being so difficult to get into Split 1 is the reduction in field size from previous seasons. Used to be 40, now it's 30, which just amps up the energy even more.
It does, and the all-in qualifying is back for pre-qual, so everyone's really got the time they need to nail their laps, and we saw across the 3 nights that the cutoff time to make Split 1, to make Split 2 just kept getting lower and lower and lower, and I watched it get further and further away. But yeah, no, it's extremely tough to get in, and we're going to see in this race 46 laps, 2 compulsory pit stops. The racing's going to be intense, and based off of Split 2, pretty hard fought. It was, I'd say, a pretty clean Split 2 race. Hopefully Split 1 can follow their standards.
Yeah, I hope so too. Reminder of the changes from last season. Total of 64 drivers competing, down from 80, with Aussie Online Gaming taking over administration of V8 SCOPS from Oceanic Sim Racing. The Podium in Split 2 can go into Split 1. And of course, real world weather forecasts. So the conditions that we're going to be racing in here are very similar to what they could be in Montreal. At this particular time of day. Speaking of, it's only 21 degrees Celsius track temperature out there. Montreal, always known for being a bit of a frosty place, but I think the drivers are going to be liking that. It's going to be giving a lot of grip.
The other thing I'm sort of looking around, Reese, and looking up at the weather is those clouds that you're seeing at the moment. That's not what I'm seeing in Sim. I'm seeing a lot of overcast sort of conditions at the moment. So track temp's going to stay exceptionally cool. Remember, America's just coming out of the back end of their winter at the moment as we move into March. They've just moved into spring. So we're right at the back end of winter. Track temp's going to be exceptionally cool. And yeah, that's what it looks like at the moment. Pretty downright overcast. Not a great day for going and hanging out at the island.
No, certainly not. Very overcast out there, but I think the big advantage of that, Ryan, is that people not going to be dealing with rising track temperatures all that much. There isn't much UV light hitting the racetrack, which is the real killer in terms of temperature buildup.
Yeah, keeping these tyres cool is probably one of the biggest things about driving these supercars. They only have one really good lap in them out of the gate, and then from that point on, you lose their peak speed, and it's tough to get them back. So you've got to keep them cool, you've got to minimize the slides, and you just need to try and keep your head, because if you lock up, you can just take a couple laps to get it back, or a couple corners at least to get it back under control, and it's very easy to just go down a slippery slope.
Yeah, indeed it is. Well, while we have time here with 15 minutes left in practice before our 35-minute qualifying session, we should take a look at how things panned out last season. It was a very competitive season indeed. Rehan Leonage and Andrew Gilliam were the championship protagonists early on, but consistency on the part of Griffin Gardner brought him right into the fold, and he ended up taking a pretty dominant-looking championship at the very end of 2023. There's quite a few drivers in this field who are looking for more out of this season, and another thing that we should probably talk about, Ryan, is some team changes. Of course, you're one of the drivers that have changed alliances. You were running as a privateer, but now you're with simrigs.com DPR. What jumped out to me was the departure of Luke Rosella and James Scott from Synergy Sim Racing. They've joined the likes of Dylan Rudd, Shane Van Gisberg, and Jared Filsell, etc., over at Lobs Esports. That's a very big move.
Yeah, just a few talented drivers in that group. There's always a lot of swapping and changing in esports. It's a very fluid space for drivers to go back and forth between different teams, and it's all based off personalities as well. Sometimes you just gel with certain people more than others. And I think at the end of the day, the team can provide a lot in terms of your setup and, you know, helping where you're struggling a bit, but it's the same drivers on the racetrack, and the ones that were fast last year, they're going to be fast again.
Indeed they are. I'll bring you into this one as well, Scott. Honestly, seeing drivers like James Scott now racing for Lobs Esports, and you know, the changes that teams go through over the years, are we expecting that Lobs Esports is going to be truly in contention for the championship this year, or Scott's ex-team and Luke Rosella's ex-team, Synergy Sim Racing, maybe still bringing the fight, because Tom Freer of Synergy Sim Racing topped qualifying?
Look, I think an interesting one is obviously the shifting around of Luke Mitchinson. I think that's a name sort of worth mentioning and worth certainly being aware of. How can you go past James Scott and Jared Filsell? The things that they've done in sim racing, but the problem for me is their consistency. Filsell's just been a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit all over the place. What I really want to see out of that team, the Lobs Esports team, is they've got a huge backer on board. We cannot underestimate the impact and the influence that Speed Cafe and the eyes that's going to bring to them. But does that accelerate the pressure that those guys are going to go through? What does that do to their mindset? Well, personally, I think those guys are just confident. I don't think they really care. I don't think they look at the sponsor. They look at the sponsor and go, yep, it's big. It does a lot of things for our sports. But I think they, for me, need to come out, and they need to come out all guns blazing. If you have a look at where Jared Filsell's been over the last 12 months, he's not happy with his own performances. He's not happy with the attitude that he's bringing to the track. This is a fresh start for him. I think he's really got to flip a switch and go, yep, I'm on this year, and I'm going to make sure that I'm Mr. Consistent this year. If he can do that, he can be very tough to top.
Yeah, he certainly will. Another driver we need to look out for, Ryan, is Bo Albert. Obviously racing as a privateer for the most part, but for V8SCOPS, he is rejoining Evolution Racing Team, of which he was one of the founding drivers. Yeah,
Bo Albert, fastest at the moment in practice here before we head in towards our two-part qualifying. Always a popular figure. He's got a massive dedicated to, I was going to say himself, but dedicated to the iRacing community in Australia, that he has grown up to be, I think, worth a couple thousand members now. Yeah, very popular driver, very fast driver, part of the iRacing Rallycross Championship Pro Series for many years, has been a very competitive driver over there, but of course in the supercar as well. One to watch has Luca Rosella Pipson in practice.
And one that we're going to be keeping a very close eye on here, Madison Down, 3-time champion of this series, no longer running the number 77, it seems. Taken 5 off the number and is running the number 72 car. Look out for Madison. He is competitive no matter where he races. Meanwhile, Brady Myers no longer having the number 1 on his car, Scott. He was champion in 2022, but he has now been beaten to that. But he's going to have another go at it along with the rest of the Trans-Tasman Racing team. There's the reigning champion, Griffin Gardner.
How about that for a segue? That was perfectly timed if ever I've asked for one. But yeah, look, I mean, Griffin Gardner's gone from strength to strength. When you look at the Supercars Online Premier Series, yeah, he went gangbusters last year. He just put everything, all his ducks in a row, kept it smooth, kept it clean, kept it consistent, was there when he needed to be, and even his off weeks weren't all that bad. But you look at other series around the country and you go, this guy's in a little bit of a rough patch. So I'm really wondering what Griffin Gardner we see, because when we see him, we see the best of him. He's very, very good, very tough to beat. But the problem is, what version of him shows up tonight? Do we see the best of Griffin Gardner, or do we see that second-tier driver is a little bit edgy, maybe gets in a few things that aren't necessarily his fault? The type of driver that turns up, he's got to make a delivery. I think this Sunday night time slot is where we get the best out of him, and I think he's most settled on a Sunday night.
Yeah, I definitely think Griffin Gardner is one to watch here. Also, the number 22 here at Synergy Sim Racing, Adam Briggs. He's a driver that we've seen plenty of in the past, and he's always in and around the top 10, maybe even top 5, and you always got to look out for him in the Enduros as Dylan Rudd goes to the top of practice. That's an excellent job there from Rudd. But Briggsy, meanwhile, a little bit further down the field this time around. Looking for a little bit more from him as everyone gets their times in.
One of the drivers I've got my eye on, Reese, and I really, really feel bad for the guy, because have a look at where he's stationed, is Ken Latta. Ken Latta, Thursday night, not just gone, but the one before, he was in position to win himself a V8 Veterans title. Do you know what the difference between doing a burnout after the finish line and qualifying your way into the Logitech series is? Well, it's just that. It's doing a burnout before the last car across the finish line. He was 2 bonus points clear of Michael Taliancic and a golden ticket spot. He's had pace. He's had consistency. He's just never had that huge standout result, season-long kind of finish. And that hurt because he wasn't going to qualify for Logitech. So that was the difference. And Michael Taliancic sat back at the end of that championship and said, man, I really, really hope that Ken Latta can take that golden tip, because I want him to see it in there. I want him to be able to compete. And, well, Tally's not here tonight, but, you know, that from 2 guys who went toe-to-toe over a 10-round season in terms of vets was just such a big mark for the guy. And Tally, he was just so frustrated. And, you know, you have to be. You got to feel, because, look, man, I mean, the difference between him competing in Logitech this year and not was a burnout probably 30 seconds too early.
Yeah, well, falling afoul of those minor regulations will always sting if you're in the middle of celebrating a championship victory, and unfortunately, something like that puts you out of it. Kenneth Ladd has always been a very fast driver. He's come up the ranks quite a bit recently. Synergy Sim Racing, ever since he joined that team, he has just come in leaps and bounds, and he's still looking very good. 11th place in the field right now, with some drivers still yet to set their times. Of course, Kenneth Ladd now with Fishy Motorsports for the foreseeable future, from what I can see. So let's see if that team change brings him a little bit of extra luck as the session ticks down here. Ryan, was starting to get a better idea of what the outright pace is looking like throughout this field. Rudd, Rosella, and Albert looking the most competitive. Blake Warboys, meanwhile, in the WK&P Sim Sports, number 63, up into 4th place right now. We can never really count out Blake Warboys, can we? He was the driver that David Coleman battled with all throughout the NTE Series season, and A bit less green on the car than the last time I saw it, but definitely just as much of the pace.
It's got to be the most colourful black paint scheme I've ever seen, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. It stands out. For fastest, as you mentioned, it's a very tight field here in practice. There is, not every driver has set a lap time, but 27 cars covered by 0.8 of a second at the moment. We haven't seen an effort from a few drivers, Rayhan, Sean McNamara, Jamie Dyke, Kurt Stenberg, Sebastian Flock, amongst those, as All Boys picks off another outlap there, beginning another flyer, getting ready for qualifying, of which we'll split the field in two, Reese, and give them 15 minutes to go and set their best effort.
Yeah, a little bit of time left for some extra pace to be found. Scott Gamble, now part of the WKNP Sim Sports stable as well. He's a driver that we've seen plenty of over the last few years. I remember he was a part of Evolution Racing Team for a time, and down in 18th at the moment, looking for a little bit extra. WKNP has always been one of those teams that has been sort of on the outside looking in for some really good results, and Warboys has been their star driver. But, Scott, I think your namesake out there in the field, he's got lots of potential.
Don't say that, because I tell you what, the vets, there was 2 Scots in the field, and I took a real liking to one of them, and ever since I started following him and watching along, he fell through the ranks. Most unlucky driver, because I supported him. So I think you might have just thrown Scott Campbell under the bus.
I certainly hope not. In
terms of things, he's really, really confident at the moment. His pace has increased. He sort of, last year, he was on top of the world. He won a V8 Vets championship, and then he said, yep, I came here, I achieved what I want to achieve. I want to take some time away. I want to spend some more time with my family. He went tripping, did a bunch of camping trips, and then sort of showed up now and again to go and do a vets race. Every single time he showed up, he was on pace every single time. Since then, he's put a lot of time into the rig, a lot more time than he was putting in before, and the performances and the results have very, very quickly followed. I've got a lot of faith in Scott Gamble. He is driving out of his skin at the moment. I think he's on for a season best performance.
Well, that has potential to either be very prescient or the worst commentator's curse in V8SCOPS history. Tune in at the end of 2024 to see whether or not that has come true. Blake Delaney out on track at the moment, split to winner. What were you going to say there?
I was just going to say, how much do you reckon Scott Gamble will pay to get me off commentary?
It'll have to be a pretty big sum, won't it? You do enjoy your comms, as we all do here at SimSpeed TV.
But yeah, no, I've got a lot of faith in him. He does a really, really good job, and he's just driving out of his skin. Delaney's an interesting one, because I've seen Blake Delaney put on some of the drives that you just sit there and you just go, oh, where is this guy? He should be doing a lot more. And then a lot of the time he just goes missing. Or he just doesn't get the strategy right. Or so, when he has an off night, it's a very, very big off night. And then sometimes he's sort of halfway off, and then at the end of qualifying, a switch flips. And all of a sudden, the real Blake Delaney shows up again. So he's a real tough card to pick.
Yeah, certainly. Well, keep an eye here on Kurt Stenberg as well, for that is an incredible stat right there. 169 V8SCOPS Split 1 starts for Stenny. He's one of the drivers that, again, has been here from the very start, and this being race number 199, that means Kurt Stenberg has only missed out on Split 1 action 30 times over the course of 10 years of racing in V8SCOPS. Ryan, that is certainly something to be proud of. Stenny has always been a factor.
Always has, always will, and he's got himself into Split 1, as you mentioned, for the 169th time, and we'll be looking forward in this field. Hasn't set a time yet, so we can't take a form guide into qualifying from him, but he was up there in pre-qualifying. And another driver, ever popular, ever present in the streaming community, Brenton Hobson. He's
Mr. 6th place.
Currently 26th at the moment in practice.
He is indeed. Well, keep an eye out for Synergy number 88. Obviously, this bright green and black color scheme is a little bit less colorful than what we've seen from Hobbo in the past. We've usually seen him racing in a blue or a very bright green car all the way through, but Synergy have upgraded their liveries somewhat, and they've gone for a bit more of a dark kind of atmosphere to them. Wondering, it's all psychological in the end, Scott, but sometimes a livery change can help to bring out the best in a driver.
What's in a paint is probably one of the biggest questions that a lot of people ask. Some people have just got green is apparently a driver's most unlucky color, which I kind of hate because I'm a big fan of. I love green and black schemes in particular, sort of my favorite two color combinations. But there are a lot of drivers out there that'll sit down and say green is just, it's unlucky, man. I don't want to be anywhere near. I don't want a wing mirror that's green. I don't want anything that's green. So it's sort of considered this color that you stay away from as far as you possibly can. So, I don't know whether or not that's an omen.
Yeah, maybe. Red is certainly a colour that brings drivers a lot of luck, and it's the main colour of Trans-Tasman Racing. You saw 160 split one starts for Madison Down, 136 for Jake Maloney. We're really going through all the veterans of this series now, aren't we, as the checkered flag flies in practice, and we'll give these drivers a couple more seconds to get a little bit more track time in, but they're all spit off the racetrack just in time for the 35-minute qualifying session. Now, it is split qualifying. If you're new to V8SCOPS competition, here's how it works. Q1 is going to be a 15-minute session within this session, and that is everyone who pre-qualified from 16th to 32nd plus the split 2 podium. So they all have 15 minutes to get their laps on the board. Then there's going to be a 5-minute break, and then for the final 15 minutes of the session, we'll have positions 1 to 15 in pre-qualifying setting their times. So this is still quite a packed racetrack, Ryan, despite it being half the field tonight.
Yeah, this is a place which, as we saw in a lot of pre-qualifying surveys, it's quite hard to get out of the way of cars coming through on fast laps, and firing out of pit lane as well. It can often be hard to figure out on the relative who's coming out of pit lane behind you, who's coming through turns 1 and 2 on a lap. You actually jump ahead of those cars that are coming through because you shortcut the first corner as you exit the pits. Pit exit, pit entry, both difficult factors. O'Shea making the second chicane a little bit shorter. Without the third chicane, there's quite a few of them. Getting a hurry on to go to the front of the queue. Andrew Dyson, another driver, going to get on with it fairly quickly here. He made some quick passes early on to get to the head of this lineup. Chris Coxhead, split 1 start, number 102. And to add to all those veterans race, it's important to point out as well, because 114 drivers trying to qualify, 64 making it. It can often be disparaging to some of those drivers coming along and maybe trying out for the first time. That's how many races these guys have done just in V8SCOPS. They're extremely experienced, and it takes a lot of practice to even get close to them.
Yeah, indeed. Its experience goes a long way in these cars, as it looks like the first driver to get a time on the board will likely be the number 41 of Andrew Dyson. And this is such a big potential driver here, Andrew Dyson. He's always had big pace in these cars. It's never quite come together for him in terms of wins and championships in V8SCOPS at least, but he's always a factor, and that simracing.com DPR car is looking a lot bluer than the last time I saw it, Scott. Let's see if that brings him any extra luck.
Well, I spoke to Bo Albert about Andrew Dyson a couple of weeks back, and you know what he said? When I think of Andrew Dyson, there's just one thing that comes to mind, and it's that big bushy beard. It's what he's known for. He wouldn't be an icon without that big bushy beard, and Bo Albert had a lot of kind things to say about him. So he's a lovely thought about guy, loved guy in the community, and yeah, I'd like to see him do better. I really think he deserves 1 or 2 more championships if you wanted to hand them out to nice guys, but that's not the way they go.
No, certainly not. It's all about pace and a little bit of luck stirred in, as well as strategy now. Well, Dyson coming to the end of this lap. We'll see if he's happy enough with it to commit to the end. On the brakes, nice and hard for the final chicane. Just avoid the off-track here. Not taking as much curb as some of the guys we've seen in Split 2. That was a big slide on the exit of the corner. But first time on the board here for the number 41 of Andrew Dyson. 1 minute 34.3. And now we leave it up to Scott Gamble and crew to put the next times on the board. Let's see if anyone gets into the 33s here. Gamble goes to second. Third fastest is Jamie Stovall. Fourth, Andrew Youssef. Jacob O'Reilly is pipped as Adam Briggs goes to second, 1:34.4. There goes Jordan Ross, first driver into the 1 minute 33 second bracket. And Connor Nixon finishing third in Split 2, goes seventh fastest for the time being. Chris Coxhead with an excellent performance there, 1:34.4 from him as well, up into fourth.
Dylan O'Shea, we saw him hurrying along to be second in the queue, came to pit lane at the end of that first lap, so he wasn't happy. He's back out on track now, so no time from him yet. That's the reason why, and again, he's diving off the circuit. I think he's just trying to get out of the way of cars on a lap as we watch coming through that extremely tight turn 4. Blake Delaney trying to warm up the tyres and the brakes, find himself a nice quiet piece of racetrack to go and set a time. At the moment, with just on 5 minutes complete, it's Jordan Ross by 4/10 over Andrew Dyson, Adam Briggs, and 13 other drivers who've set a time so far. Dyson pushing on with it for a second lap, though, coming back to pit lane. Remember, there is no escape rule in effect here in qualifying race, so they do have to complete that cool-down lap, get back to the pits, and then they can put on a fresh set of tyres and go again. And just to touch on that livery again, it's a lot bluer than my version of the DPL livery, so I'm not sure what's going on there.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. Yeah, interesting point that you make there about the no escape rule. That's another thing that is returning once more for V8 SCOPS, and it's been part of the rule set since more or less the very start. You have to make it back under the pits, back to the pits under your own power. If you can't do that, be it due to a crash or a hardware issue or running out of fuel or anything like that, you have to request a tow from race control. And Scott, if it happens in qualifying, if you have to request a tow back to the pits, that's your session done.
Yep, which is smart. I mean, you know, if effectively you can't make it back to the pit lane under your own power, yep, I like that rule. I really like the way that works out. Update on Ken Ladder, who we've got the cameras focused on at the moment, actually had a packet loss at the start end of this service. So there's a few things. I know I was talking to Connor Nixon a couple of weeks ago about it in terms of what went wrong in one of his qualifying runs for the Logitech series. Had a mouse failure, actually couldn't get into his rig, couldn't get the session started, those sorts of things. It's all of these little boxes that you've got to tick. We were talking about it in terms of the Split 2 race. Get your start. Get your qualifying. Qualifying's out of the way in terms of Split 2. So it's get your start, get to that first corner, get your pit stop. Already things are falling a little bit apart. I really feel sorry for Ken because he really deserves some big finishes this year. I'm really, really hopeful that he can stick this qualifying lap together. Take a breath, Kenny. Settle it now whilst you've got an opportunity. Go again, son. I reckon you can do it. I reckon you've got an opportunity to get inside the top 10 here.
Yeah, he's got plenty of time to do it. 28 minutes left in the session. That translates to 13 minutes in Q1. So he's gearing it up here. Nice and smooth across the curbs. Don't want the car too unsettled at the start of the lap. Otherwise, you'll slide on the way out of the final corner and not get the run down the start-finish stretch. So on board here with Kenneth Ladder for a lap around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, which we haven't actually done a full on-board lap today. Nice and smooth into turns 1 and 2. Try and keep it tight. Keep it tight on the exit as well to straighten out the exit of the corner. And then you come to the first of many chicanes that line this lap. You got to try and take as much of the curve as you can. A little bit of grass through the left-hander, avoid the wall on the outside, and then just a little tap of the brakes, maybe just a lift through this fast right-hander, and then immediately back on the brakes for the second chicane. Climb all over the curb through the left, and try your best not to slide too much out of the right. It opens up, and if you can get the car straightened up sooner, that results in an excellent run onto this back stretch. Then a little bit earlier than you expect on the brakes for this chicane here. Use all of the curb and then some if you dare, but be careful of the slowdown. And then it's the run to the Lapangla hairpin. Get on the brakes at this kink in the road, straighten it out, all the way down to first gear for the V8 drivers, and then straighten it out as soon as possible once more. Get as much traction as you can. The earlier you can get on the power and take advantage, the better the run is going to be down this straight up to the final corner and the Wall of Champions. This is a very tough part of the circuit to get right. You are getting on the brakes hard here from top speed around this place. Clamber over the curbs, bounce off them, but don't hit the wall like Ladder just did. I think that's invalidated the lap right at the end.
It's a shame because it looked good. It actually looked like a reasonable lap. Yeah, it has. That's frustrating. Now he's got to pick himself up and do it again, and time's ticking out. And that will sort of just continue to mount and continue to mount and continue to mount. I know one of the guys, again, I spoke to was Bo Albert about that, where, you know, you lose your first lap, and all of a sudden you come through the pits because you go, oh, well, I got off track. You know, the lap was aborted before I even got it started, or something happened before the lap got started. So then you're out of the queue. And then one of the worst things at a short track about being out of the queue. Oh, my word!
Oh, goodness gracious. That was a big slide for Chris Coxhead as Andre Youssef goes to second overall. That's a fantastic time from him. Jordan Ross back in the pit lane. Sean McNamara now up to third there for 9.5 Sim Sports. Luke Mitchinson still fourth. Andrew Dyson demoted down to fifth. That was a great run of lap times from everybody. But look at this slow-mo here, Ryan, for Chris Coxhead. This is another one of the series veterans, but just a bit too much curb.
Those curbs are brutal. It's a millimeter away from being perfect and gliding over them and car settling and bang onto the throttle. And the other millimeter, that happens. A big catch, but lap ruined for Coxhead. If he was starting a lap, that lap's ruined as well. Unfortunately, it's not that too long a run down to turn one, but you do want to be firing off that final corner as best as you can. Picking up the 41 of Dyson, he just did his second flying lap, and it wasn't an improvement. That's why he slid down the order to P5. That's a particularly aggressive pit entry. Wants to be doing that in the race, because I dare say that'll cop him the speeding penalty. As this host of drivers race down the back straight, they're still basically doing a qualifying lap just to get back to pit lane. But as you mentioned earlier, you only really get one good lap out of these tyres. So unless on this lap back they fire themselves up on the Delta, they're all just firing back to pit lane as quickly as they can.
4.5 minutes on top, boys.
Yeah, they'll have enough for one more lap here, Scott.
And something I've just sort of keeping half an eye on, I'm pretty sure both times coming through that final chicane, Kurt Stenberg's cut the chicane. So there are two drivers yet to set a time. Kurt Stenberg and Ken Ladder are the two guys. Keep an eye. This is their chance. They've got one chance. So now do you go, well, I've got to put a banker together, don't I? You know, it has to be, instead of it being a 9.5 tenths, 9.9 tenths, well, now it's going to be an 8 tenths kind of lap, which means you're starting further back. Remember what we talked about before the start of Split 2? You want to qualify quite well in these races, put yourself ahead of the trouble.
Blake Delaney as well hasn't put a lap on the board yet. Jamie Dyke, also progressing from Split 2, is 14th. And Connor Nixon, the best of them at the moment, in 12th.
Yeah, this is interesting, isn't it? Between a lot of these drivers, it looks like Dylan O'Shea and Brenton Hobson have not done a lap either. So there is a lot to play for these guys. Keep an eye on them here in this final 3.5 minutes of Q1.
It's actually a more congested session being in this slow session, so it's an advantage to be in the top 15 because it's the bottom 16 plus the 3 from Split 2. You've got 19 cars out there. It's just less and less room, and when you're all on the same cycle, it's not like you got 19 cars spread across the racetrack. They're all on the same piece of road. I mean, look at this, into the hairpin. They'll all get a bit of a tow, but sometimes it's best just to have a bit of clean space in front. Yeah,
especially if you're at the end of the lap and someone's decided to abandon their run, and they might stand a chance of rear-ending you getting into the pit lane with the later braking point than that for the final chicane. But final salvo of laps coming up for all of this crew. We have the Vermilion Motorsports guys out there. We've got a big bit of curb usage from Brenton Hobson to start off the lap. Already slowing down is Zach Rattray White. I think he got a slowdown penalty through the final chicane, so that's one Vermilion car that's not going to improve here at the end of this session. But into the first couple of corners they come. Can Jordan Ross improve on that 133.9? What can Brenton Hobson do to put his first time on the board? Following his teammate, will be getting a little bit of slipstream on the faster sections of this course, but look at that. He didn't quite maximize the exit of the first chicane there. Looking a little bit uncomfortable here as he's coming through the first half.
Well, he's only 100th of a second down on this lap to Jordan Ross. Almost identical through that first sector, so he's following him nicely, and Jordan Ross, if he's comfortable with that 33.9, might just try to back it off a bit and give Hobson a big slipstream effect down the back straight. We'll see. We'll see whether they are that nice as teammates as they come towards the end of the lap. And we get the second sector split here between Ross. 29.05 for him, 29.08 for Hobson, again shadowing Jordan Ross through that second sector. If he can finish it off, it'll get him on the board. That's all that Hobson needs here, because at the moment he'll be starting plumb last if he doesn't finish this lap off.
Well, down the straight they come. Brenton Hobson looking to get a time on the board. Hasn't done that yet. Kenneth Latta does, and it's a 134.7. That's 15th overall for the time being. Into the final corner they come. It looks like Jordan Ross has gone into the pit lane. He's not going to improve on this run. Hobson across the line, and it is going to be a 134.47. That's 11th spot so far for Brenton Hobson. Big improvements for Jamie Stovold and Dylan O'Shea. Third and sixth for them for the time being. Blake Delaney, meanwhile, to the end of a lap here. Split 2 winner, sets a 134.8, and that is all the way down in 19th. Connor Nixon with a massive improvement up to P5. There's definitely a lot more pace available for him. Kurt Stenberg across the line and sets a time good enough for 15th. Does Andre Youssef improve here for Altus Australia? That Sector 1 is looking incredibly slow, so I think he's just getting this hot lap in with a few seconds to go. That's the checkered flag in the first qualifying session, and now we wait for the drivers who've just started a hot lap to finish it.
Yeah, Youssef will be the last driver across the line. See what he can do. Zach Rattray White also on a lap. That chicane is extremely tricky because you're trying to open up this run. It's a fairly long run down towards the hairpin, but the way it sets itself up, you can't take all of that inside curve or the first part of the chicane without getting a slowdown. You've got to really pick your point perfectly. And again, through the hairpin, pick all your markers perfectly. If you get a poor exit from there, you can pretty much throw the lap in the bin because it's a massive run, full throttle, all the way down to the chicane. You leap time all the way down that straight. As he's got Jake O'Reilly in tow, getting a good little slipstream effect from him here as he comes through, and into pit lane comes Rattray White. So that lap was going to be no better for him. Jacob O'Reilly was a little bit further up the road, wasn't able to improve. Here comes Andre Youssef out of the hairpin, and Scott Rankin, as he comes to the line here, is this lap going to be good enough to put himself provisionally on pole?
I think this is a cool down lap for Andre, so this is just getting this one out of the way, and there was a few drivers that were in and amongst it. I really wanted to highlight Dylan O'Shea and the improvements that he's sort of gone through in sort of probably the last 10 months as well. So he's on the improve, and he's climbing through things. I'm really, really impressed with his growth and as he continues to go on forward. So he's got a responsibility now. Okay qualifying. Hopefully it's good enough to beat a few people from split from session 2.
Youssef did press on, but you saw it on the screen. He gave the wall a massive whack out of the last corner, and that invalidated his lap time. And that is the results from qualifying 1 here for round 1 of the season race. Provisionally, it's Jordan Ross on pole position, but there's 15 very fast drivers to come.
Yeah, exactly where he'll be placed remains to be seen. Yusuf, Stolvold, Dyson, and Nixon round out your top 5. McNamara, O'Shea, Mitchinson, Zachary Trey White, and Adam Briggs rounding out the top 10. It's certainly looking very good for the time being here, Scott. Plenty of very close times throughout the field. Look at the gap between Gamble and Hobson, only 1,000th.
Yeah, and there was a few drivers up and down the field that were a little bit like that as well. I think it was Sean McNamara and I think Dylan O'Shea in 6th and 7th were much the same as that one. So Hobson, in terms of things, was just in behind there. And look at Zach Rattray White. Really want to highlight for Zach Rattray White, new car combination for him. He's still wetting his feet in terms of V8 supercars. A very well-renowned GT3 driver, can drive the wheels off a GT3 car, but a V8 supercar is a little bit all at sea for him. He's adapted well to the platform, working really well with teammate Connor Nixon. He's growing week and week and week in and then week out.
Indeed he is. And the Proven Energy safety car out on track for the first time this season in a proper V8 SCOPS race session. Dan Stevens at the wheel, bringing the electric motored machine out. Used to be the Porsche Cayman that was the official SCOPS safety car, and the 911 GT3 Cup before that, but now the Mission R, thanks to Proven Energy, which installs solar and electrical solutions in the Brisbane region, for lending your support to this season of V8 SCOPS. Lovely looking safety car there.
Righto, lads, I'll have to leave you with it, but I tell you what, that's good. I'm wetting my lips at the opportunity, and I'm going to tell you what, the end of pit lane is getting busy at this point in time, and I'm kind of disappointed I'm missing out on this, so I'll leave you guys with it. Thank you very much for the time. It's been a pleasure, and I tell you what, I'll have to watch this one back, I think.
Indeed. Thanks very much to Scott Rankin for being with us here through the first half of this V8 SCOPS Round 1 broadcast. Now we do another sighting lap around the circuit before a couple of minutes remaining, and we will see the extra drivers on their way out here. We have got Bo Albert, Sebastian Flock, and Rehan Leonage there. Rehan, the youngest driver in the field, he absolutely exploded onto the scene a couple of years ago, and he was well in contention for the championship last year. The young Carter, definitely one of the stars of the Australian sim racing scene right now.
Absolutely, and that first result instantly just commanded respect from everyone in the field, and I think Leonage is one of those drivers that races extremely cleanly, which is phenomenal for someone so young as well, to have that respect in their racecraft, and shows very, very promising signs for the future for Rehan Leonage, and would be my hot pick for pole position in this one. He was second fastest, I think, in pre-qualifying. Was fastest for a long time in pre-qualifying. Set his time on night number 1.
Indeed he did. And remember, Leonage got his first V8 SCOPS race victory right here at Montreal last year. So might he want to repeat that? He's certainly going to try, but there's a lot of competition around here. We've got series veterans returning after some time away from the series. Remember, we haven't seen much of the likes of Madison Down and Jake Maloney as of recent from Trans-Tasman Racing. We haven't seen Kurt Stenberg in a while either. Bo Albert having a proper tilt at V8 SCOPS for the first time in a while as well. Usually see him active at the Enduros, but of course back with Evolution Racing Team for this season, and he is looking mighty quick himself. Just reflecting on the pre-qualifying results, Tom Freer was the quickest, and his lap time was a 1 minute 33.77. Now, that's 0.2 quicker than Jordan Ross's fastest lap. So that gives you a bit of a sense of not only how quick the top drivers in this field are going to be, but how good that lap is from Jordan Ross.
It's a phenomenal effort. And I think a few of those drivers in the top 5 stand a pretty good test of time against the second group. It's hard to produce the same lap in 15 minutes that you can produce across cumulatively 4 hours per night if you maximize the entire session of pre-qualifying. So we'll see. We'll see what stacks up here. It was a 33.7 from Tom Freer, as you mentioned. It was 2/10 back to most of the rest of the field. It was truly a phenomenal lap from him. We'll see if he can reproduce. We'll see what Bo Albert can produce as we go on board in the sim with the once upon a time extremely active Twitch streamer.
Indeed, and it looks like he's gotten himself some team gear back on as well. racing for Evolution Racing Team once again after spending most of his time as a privateer. Remember, this is a V8 only association for Bo Albert. Doesn't race for ERT in any other series from what I have seen, but he's got a very...
There was a huge slide behind Albert from Maloney.
Yeah, just noticed that.
All sorts of sideways. I think we picked it up on the back of the shot. That was wild.
Maybe we'll get a replay of that after this salvo of laps is over. So Bo Albert in the slipstream right now of Evolution Racing Team teammate Robert Gibbs, who is a recent addition to ERT, not as recent as some others, but formerly a part of Drop Bear Motorsport, joined Evolution Racing Team last year and has certainly come leaps and bounds further in terms of pace. Albert, I think, will be getting a little whisper of slipstream from him coming down the straight to the final chicane. The Casino Straight, as it's called. There is a casino on the inside of the circuit. Very aggressive curb usage from the ERT Mustangs, and ERT always put a lot of effort into their setups. Albert shortening the run to the line. Gibbs goes across it, and looks like the lap's not going to count for Gibbs, but it is for Albert, and it's good enough for third.
Good first effort. Puts himself right amongst the mix of those front drivers. What other times are we going to see pop up the order? Brady Myers, Luke Rosella goes to the top with a 33.69. What an effort!
What an effort indeed. Luke Rosella and James Scott leading a Lobs Esports 1-2 at the front of the field right now. Very close indeed in the Speed Cafe and Blazon Commodores. Beautiful lap.
That is going to take quite some beating. I'll tell you what, quicker than we've seen all week so far, that lap. As we pick up Maloney, this is a replay. Just got on the throttle a touch too early here, I'd say.
Yikes! Oh, that's fantastic. 600 plus horsepower going through both rear wheels of those cars, and it's a locked differential on these things. You can't alter the coast and power settings. There's the same amount of power going through both rear wheels all the time, every time. So if you go for a slide in these things, you better hope that you have a very quick right foot and very quick hands on the wheel to recover it. But Maloney has plenty of experience in these cars. I'm sure he's had to catch more than a few of those.
Sideways is part of the course in these supercars. You're not going to get through a race without at least one sideways moment. At least it's by my experience. 46 laps. It's going to be tough to keep those tyres underneath you across the entire race distance later on today. 28 times on the board then after the first run. Still missing lap times from some key drivers. Blake Warboys, Rohan Leonard, Maloney, as we saw. Griffin Gardner, another one. Robert Gibbs, Mark Italiantich, and Dylan Pereira all yet to set a lap.
Yes, indeed. And remember, Griffin Gardner, reigning champion of this series, he's waiting for the opportunity to head out there. Well, he is already out there for 9.5 Sim Sports, but just taking a sedate lap back to the pits. It looks like he did cross the line, but the lap didn't count. So another opportunity should present itself for him very soon. 9.5 minutes to go in the session. If he gets right back out there, he'll probably have another 2 runs at setting a time for the grid.
He's going
to stay out.
The off-tracks here are particularly brutal, especially over the chicanes where you're trying to take as much as you can. It only takes a little bit, especially here at turn 1 as well, I found. If you just take too much of that inside curb, it's very easy off-track to have. And I'll tell you what, Gardner wouldn't have been far away there. It can ruin your lap before it's even got a chance to get going.
Yeah, correct. I think at turn 1, it's the white line that provides the track limits. Meanwhile, in other places around the circuit, it's the edge of the red and white striped curbs that defines the track limits. Number 79, Rehan Leonage, meanwhile, he's trying to work his way forward after not setting a time in the first salvo. So he's towing along his teammate, Dylan Pereira, at the Phoenix Racing Team. Very good bunch of drivers in that squad. A little bit of a slide there for Pereira coming out of the hairpin. Leonage with a good advantage here in the slipstream of Jake Maloney and gaining. I think Maloney might be bringing it back into the pits on this one if he can't get that done. He's going to let the Phoenix cars by, as well as Michael Taliancic into the 777. It looks like he picked up a slowdown, did Jake Maloney, or something to that effect. Across the line, Leonage is going to come. And we will see 134.168 from him. That's good enough for 8th spot. And Pereira getting into 9th, which is pretty good considering that he had a bit of wheel spin on the exit of the hairpin. I think we're going to be seeing more pace out of both of those cars soon as Griffin Gardner comes across the line. He looked very aggressive across the curbs at the final chicane. Hopefully for him, this lap counts. 134.1, and it does count. Gets him into P5.
The champion is here to shake it up at the front of the field. All these drivers trying to challenge him, and he is very much putting his foot forward straight away to be a hard man to beat up there in the top 5 early on. Sebastian Flock is up there as well, sliding out of the chicane, part of a bit of a slipstream train here. A flurry of drivers coming across the line. Where does Flock put himself with this effort? Just starting lap,
starting it.
We'll come back to that in 2 minutes' time.
We will indeed. It reminds me of it was a Formula One race in the 90s. Murray Walker and Martin Brundle commentating, and I think it was Jean Lacey coming up to the line, and Murray announcing it as if it was the end of a qualifying lap, and he goes, Jean Lacey across the line, where is he? Martin Brundle immediately responds, starting his quick lap, Murray. That is certainly something that we see quite a bit in V8 SCOPS, as there's improvements for Bo Albert and Robert Gibbs. They go to P5 and P6. Bo Albert just knocking on the door of the 1 minute 33 second bracket, and he has time to go out there for one more.
Not to liken ourselves to Murray Walker and Martin Brundle, that is.
Of course, of course. They are leagues above us.
Sebastian Flock still firmly entrenched. Whoever's at the front of this train of cars is towing along quite a few people. It's James Scott in the Speed Cafe backed Mustang. I didn't actually catch a perfect look at what car that is. It's a 50-50 guess. But Flock down amongst this group of drivers. The field seems to have split roughly half and half. There's a few off sequence, a few more than we saw in split 2. So maybe easing that congestion even more so for these drivers as they hop over left and over the right, popping all 4 tyres in the air at some point through that chicane sequence. Across the line, they all come. Flock 24th. There's a 34.191, and that moves him up to 13th, and off the road he goes.
Madison Down, meanwhile, his time's only good enough for 18th, and Madison is considered one of the best drivers in the Australia-New Zealand sim racing community, so that's a bit further down than we expected him to be. I think it's just going to be a slow build here for the 3-time champion, as Luke Rosella is going to bring it across the line one more. We'll see if he improves on the 33.69 he set, an absolutely stonking lap time. And it looks like that's going to be the start of another lap there for Luke Rosella. He is monstering those curbs, though, looking very comfortable in the number 55.
A little slide, though, coming out of turn 2. It just costs a little bit of time as you're trying to apply that throttle, meet the curb on the right, get the power down as you hop over the left, get a little bit of airtime with the left side tyre as you're going down the hill through turns 2, 3 and 4, and then again another little chicane. This one a bit more elongated than the rest of them on the circuit, but again, you're trying to turn and get the power down at the same time. Putting it into 3rd gear helps with that traction application just a bit as you get down towards chicane number 3 on the lap. And this one, you're trying to take all of that curb on the right to straighten up this exit. Rosella, I think, was just a little bit too far to the left. And then again, setting up for the hairpin, you've got to get this car straight as an arrow by the time you hit the brakes, get all that turning out of the wheel before you hit that brake pedal, and avoid locking up the front tyres. And that all-important throttle application onto the back straight. Maybe getting a distant tow from that car ahead. That's Jake Maloney, who's already given Rehan Leonage a pretty handy tow in this session. Probably not by intention, but it was helping him a lot, I'd say, on that lap. That was good enough to put Leonage in 11th, and Rosella, not happy, to pits.
Well, he can still get one more lap on the board here with 3 minutes and 18 seconds remaining in the session. Meanwhile, here's Dylan Pereira giving a bit of a tow to Rehan Leonage. We'll see if the 2 Phoenix Racing Team Commodores can get themselves into the top 10. Pereira in previous years, I've noticed he hasn't quite been on the level of Leonage in terms of pace, but that looks to be 100% not the case in 2024. Pereira, I think, has improved a lot here, and he's a lot closer to Leonage than he was. So I'm glad that they've worked out whatever issues Pereira might have been having in that car. For now, though, they are doing the you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Oh dear. All right. So Leonage goes into the pits, and Pereira, unfortunately, making a meal of the final chicane there, all over the curbs. Remember, Pereira has to make it back to the pits under his own power here. He better hope that he doesn't... Oh, he's going to have to do a 3 or 5 point turn to get himself going again. Fortunately, the track is quiet in that area. He's the only car in that section. I think he might just be able to make it out for one more. I don't think so, actually.
I think that'll be a session done.
Yeah, that's a shame for Dylan Pereira. He'll start no better than 12th. For now, though, Robbie Gibbs and Bo Albert knocking on the door of the top 4, these two. And there's plenty more to come.
Little kiss the wall from Robert Gibbs out of turn number 8 there. Turn 9, little kink before they get to the hairpin. Turn 10. And Gibbs giving a handy slipstream to Bo Albert. A couple of ERT Mustangs. Good to see the differentiation in the colours as well. We can always easily pick out which one's Albert. He's almost trademark at this point. We'll call it aqua blue colour scheme.
Absolutely. That is Bo's colour of choice. Through the final turns they come. What kind of improvements are we going to see from Albert? Because I think Gibbs might have gotten a 0x over the course of that lap. Lets Bo Albert through at the line, and it's a 133.9 for Bo Albert. Gets into 4th spot, and finally into the 133s himself. That demotes Jordan Ross down to P5, but that's certainly not a bad thing. That lap that Ross set in the initial part of the session is simply fantastic, considering it's still good enough for P5 all this time later.
Someone was coming into the pit zone with a blown motor. Might have popped the downshifts a bit too hard, trying to get it slowed up for the pit speed line. 40 seconds on the clock. Rosella coming around for what's the start of a lap, I'm going to have a guess. And Sebastian Flock coming through at the end of his final flying lap. Currently sitting 13th fastest. He's just half a second away from P1. Even more so, he's just under 3/10 away from P3. That's how well Rosella's done to put a margin on most of the field here. He's got 2/10 over P2. Very close from P3, sorry. Very close from P3 on back as Flock has had enough. He'll start no higher than 13th. A lot of drivers, I think, have had their fill of qualifying here. There's still this group, though. The fastest drivers on the circuit. Luke Rosella, James Scott, Dylan Rudd. They're 1, 2, 3 on the times. And they're trying to outdo each other at the moment on this final lap.
Indeed they are. Will Lobs Esports be able to hold on to the 1-2 they have at the front of this field? That looked like a lot of curb usage there from James Scott. And they've got a driver in tow of them. Looks like, yeah, it's Dylan Rudd, also part of Lobs Esports right now. It's a 1-2-3 for the whole stable. Meanwhile, Madison down across the line there at the final part of the session. Once again, not good enough to improve, unfortunately. It's going to be P18 at best for the 3-time champion of V8SCOPS and the reigning champion of Logitech Pro Invitational. Rosella backs out, allows James Scott to end the lap. It's going to be a trip to the pits for him. I think they might have both been giving a slipstream to Dylan Rudd. Is there going to be any improvement here for the 990 right at the end of the session? Has to make up a 10th to get into P2. And it's going to be a 133.695 for Rudd. He splits Rosella and Scott.
He missed out on pole there by 0.005 of a second. He almost mugged both his teammates after getting the double toe from them. That would have been a conversation to have down in the team brief, I reckon. He's mugged one of them, though. He's gone to second.
Absolutely. Brilliant stuff there from Dylan Rudd. One of the drivers that we've seen consistently improve throughout the years, formerly of 9.5 Sim Sports, which Griffin Gardner here is a part of, and you'd say safely the lead driver at 9.5. Is this going to be a trip to the pits for him? It is. So reigning V8SCOPS champion, securing a 7th place start there. And it looks to me like that's everyone done. So Let's go through the grid for the first round of V8 SCOPS in 2024. Luke Rosella will start on pole position, Dylan Rudd alongside him, and behind them we have James Scott starting alongside Bo Albert. 1, 2, 3 for Lobs Esports. Bo Albert, the top Evolution Racing Team competitor. Top Synergy car will be Jordan Ross, still P5 after setting that stonking time in the first qualifying session. Robbie Gibbs is going to be alongside him on the third row. Griffin Gardner, the number 1, starting out of P7. He's alongside Altus Australia's Andre Youssef to round out the fourth row of the grid. And then behind them, we have Tom Freer, who topped pre-qualifying, starting alongside Trans-Tasman Racing's Brady Myers, 2022 champion, out of 10th.
Rehan Leonage will go from P11, just missed out on that top 10 berth. He's got his Phoenix Racing teammate in Dylan Pereira starting alongside him on row number 6. Sebastian Flock goes from 13th for Evolution Racing Team. He's got Jamie Savold of Synergy Sim Racing starting from 14th on the other side of the grid. Andrew Dyson leads the way, the only DPR car in Split 1, starting 15th. Connor Nixon from Vermilion Motorsport starting 16th. Just next to him. Those two have raced each other a lot lately across various leagues. Keep an eye on that. Mike Talientich from Altus Australia in 17th, and Madison Down in the TTR car starts 18th, and you'd have to say maybe a little bit out of position for both of those drivers on the 9th row of the grid. Sean McNamara and Dylan O'Shea make it an all 9.5 Sim Sports on row 10, only 0.6 of a second off pole, mind you.
Yeah, that's how close things are in this series. New signing for Synergy Sim Racing, Luke Mitchinson, starts alongside Blake Warboys, NTE Series champion from last year. Zach Rattray White for Vermilion Motorsports starts in 23rd place alongside Synergy number 22. Adam Briggs at the wheel of that one. Then we move back to Chris Coxhead, one of the series veterans, starting alongside 9.5 Sim Sports Cameron Jones. Then we have Scott Gamble, newer to the WKMP stable, starts alongside the veteran, the 88, Brenton Hobson. Will he be able to elevate himself to 6th or better in this one? Kurt Stenberg, the most experienced driver in the field, is going to start in 29th place alongside Jacob O'Reilly. Then we have one of our split 2 podium, Jamie Dykes, starting alongside Paul Young. Phase 4 Paul Young, certainly a car to watch. Kenneth Latter starts the Fishy 269 out of 33rd alongside Blake Delaney, who won Split 2. And last car on the grid, not getting a time on the board, Trans-Tasman number 29, Jake Maloney. 35 cars going to the start of this race. And we always have to look out for turns 1 and 2 at Montreal. There's a lot to play for, and everyone's going to be fighting for a piece of racetrack. How many of these cars on screen are we going to see go off the circuit? How many of them may we see spun halfway around the lap? Will we have to see the Proven Energy safety car out on track before the end of the first lap? 46 lap race here with 2 compulsory pit stops between laps 2 and 44. There's a lot of strategy work going into how the drivers approach these races. Used to be a 250k standard format, down to 200 for this season. 2024 is getting ready to rev up. Fire spitting out of the exhaust as the green flag flies, and we are away. Luke Rosella not getting a good run off the line. He's immediately going to drop down. Dylan Rudd is going to lead into turn 1 as it's 3 wide between Ross, Albert, and Rosella for a brief moment. Robbie Gibbs sticks to the inside. Is going to try and follow his Evolution Racing Team teammate through. Look at this beautiful field of cars all making their way through turns 1 and 2 without incident, but there's an incident. Jordan Ross gets spun into the wall coming out of the first chicane, and it's one of the Phoenix Racing Team cars around as well.
And they're all stacked up now, trying to go through turn 5 because there was more contact. Dylan O'Shea involved in there somewhere. There's absolute, I don't know what to say, it's absolute chaos there as they tried to get around Dylan Pereira's stricken car coming out of turn number 4. He's got to come back to pit road. Another slow-moving vehicle. That's Chris Coxhead with damage by the looks of things. Maybe a slowdown. There was a few cars into the fence as they tried to get around Pereira. Off the line though, Dylan Rudd, beautiful conversion. James Scott, I think, had the best launch of all of them, but he had to go around the slow-moving Luke Rosella. And there's a big dive from one of the Phoenix Racing Team cars. the hairpin, and it results in Taliancic going around.
It's a shame there for that's Andrei Yusuf actually that has been turned around there. He's going to have to let everybody go, and he gets a little tap on the nose for good measure. A chaotic first lap for many drivers, but coming up to the final part of the lap here for the front of the field, Luke Rosella still leads the way. Bo Albert has elevated himself to second at the end of the first lap. Griffin Gardner up to a very good position there in P6. Dylan Rudd and James Scott, still leading the field. Albert up to third. My apologies. Timing got a little bit off there for me. This is what happened to Jordan Ross. He actually made contact there with, it looked like Gibbs. So the Lobs Esports car not involved in that. We'll see if race control decides to throw a penalty the way of the number 2.
And Pereira was turned around, I think, by one of the TTR cars. They were side by side trying to get through there. Might have been slightly put off by Jordan Ross spearing off to the right hand side of the screen as they exited turn 4. They're going to way up. The move at the hairpin that resulted in Yusuf spearing off the road 3 wide, doesn't work into the hairpin, and just no room for Yusuf to turn in.
Yeah, that's unfortunate there for Andrei Yusuf. We also saw a spin for Brenton Hobson, and Blake Warboys has gone around as well. That looks to be at the third chicane there. That's unfortunate. Has to get it swung around and back up to speed. Going to fall down to at least 33rd position as a result of that. But up the front of the field, there's no such thing. Lobs Esports 1-2 at the moment, with Dylan Rudd leading James Scott to the line. Bo Albert still holding on to third, but he's going to have the hard-charging Luke Rosella, who started on pole position, trying to get that podium position back.
It was Sebastian Flock that turned Pereira around. Stovall then got into Nixon as he tried to get through. Stovall with big damage to the rear of his car as a result of that. And that's what caused the massive stack up as they all tried to filter through turn 5, which is the most street circuit 5 this circuit gets.
Well, this is the onboard from Flock, and Pereira just ahead of him. It looks like Pereira got on the brakes a bit there to avoid the spinning Jordan Ross, and unfortunately Flock couldn't react in time. That's a shame to see, but we keep our eye here on the front of the field once more. Dylan Rudd is holding on to the lead here. How much of an attack is James Scott going to put on, I wonder?
Well, you've got 2 compulsory pit stops. That window is now open, so drivers can make their first stop anytime from now. They're restricted to 66.6 litres in the tank, so that'll get them roughly 17 laps into this race before they have to come in, before they run out of fuel.
Yeah, and it's a 46-lap race, so should be able to make it to the end on 2 pit stops with a full tank, and I don't think it's going to be any sort of super long middle stints from this as we keep our eye on the chaos in the midfield here. Kenneth Latta in the Fishy 269 facing off against Mike Taliancic here, who's had a bit of damage to the front. Remember, these guys raced each other very closely in V8 Vets, and they're going to make contact coming into the final chicane. Taliancic turning Latta around, and Taliancic decides, okay, I'm going to jump straight into the pits there.
Yeah, Kenneth Latta just kept moving across in front of Taliancic, and that has spun himself out. I don't think race control will have too much to do there. Fortunate for Taliancic and fortunate for Latta as well. They both take the opportunity to get a service. It's a safety car in a few laps' time. They'll both be back in the fight, but here's the replay on board looking back, and the gap just gets ever closer.
It does. Looks like Latta just went to the left by a fraction of a degree coming into the braking zone, and unfortunately, I would say that there's going to be no recompense for that. Taliancic, I don't think, did anything wrong there. He couldn't have moved any further to the left. He was right on the edge of the racetrack. So Griffin Gardner here up into 6th spot now, only having gained 1 place. But he is rounding up Robbie Gibbs here. There's a bit of a gap ahead to Luke Rosella. There won't be as much of a slipstream that Gibbs gets from that, but Griffin Gardner should be right in on it. Remember, he's got Tom Freer behind him as well, who topped pre-qualifying. There's a lot of pace in the Synergy 707 from here.
it's a pretty tightly bunched top half a dozen cars at the moment. In fact, it feels like the top 8 are all line astern. Maybe a little bit of a gap then back to P9 Andrew Dyson starting to open up as he's got a couple of Trans-Tasman racing cars. And we've got a car stopped at the exit of turn 2 on the right-hand side of the circuit. That is Blake Delaney.
Oh no.
He's well offline, but I would call that a safety car. He's got to get that car across the road effectively to recover it.
Yeah, he's a bit too far from a marshal's post or an opening in the wall there.
Big far from the cameras too.
There it is. Safety car is called. The Proven Energy safety car will emerge onto the circuit for the first time here after 4 laps of action completed. Most of the field on lap 5 right now. Out comes the safety car with Dan Stevens at the wheel. And now this provides a bit of a reset for everybody. Question is, will we see the majority of the field come in for their first pit stop here? Seems a little bit early for it, considering how long the tyres last at their optimum pace.
It does. It could be a bit of a free stop in terms of everyone going slowly, but if you do pit, and a lot of people don't pit, you go right to the back of the field and lose a little track position. This is what happened to Delaney. Messed up turn 1, put him wide, out of position for turn 2. Some sort of failure for Delaney. Pit limiter goes on.
Well, the yellow light is blinking on the back of the car, so it seems like it's an engine issue, potentially. We might have to get the onboard of that, just to tell the full story. We'll get that in just a moment as Dylan Rudd is going to bring it across the line here out on the circuit, but there's a bunch of drivers making their way into the lane. Brady Myers, Andrew Dyson, Madison Downs, Sebastian Flock, Stovold, Maloney, Stenberg, Nixon, Dyke, and Coxhead as well. So all of the Trans-Tasman racing cars have decided to find their way into the pit lane.
Maloney had come up the order 16 spots before that safety car came out. He was the biggest mover in the opening phases of this race.
So here's the onboard with Blake Delaney. Keep an eye here on the... Oh, he's still in 3rd gear, and it looks like there's no revs in the engine, so I think he might have popped the motor. There wasn't the telltale smoke, but potentially that's a big issue there for Blake Delaney. Maybe there was a bit of a hardware failure. Maybe the ignition was turned off. Can't really say for sure, but either way, engine issue, putting Blake Delaney out of the race. That's a big blow for the Split 2 winner.
Just thinking on the strategy of those drivers that have pitted, the critical lap in order to pit and then make it home, the earliest you could do it, from my info, was lap 12. So an interesting one here. Maybe looking to give themselves a shorter stop a little bit later on. Don't know if it's the right move, Reese, but I'm not a strategic mastermind. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know either. Now, there's, I've just noticed something for Andrew Dyson. It was pointed out in the InSim text chat, but Andrew Dyson's pit entry looked a bit suspect. It was certainly a difficult way into the lane. Dyson wanting to go for the pits, but Rehan Leonage wanting to stay out. Dyson went around Leonage and actually crossed over the white line that denoted pit entry. Look at this here on board from Andrew Dyson. He didn't get an iRacing assigned black flag for this, which is interesting. But that looked, yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that.
Questionable. That's not sure about that one. Whether he just misjudged it or whether he was reacting to the cars behind pitting after he, I think just a misjudgment from Dyson there, but he gets away with one. That's for sure.
Yeah, certainly does. Either way, Dyson re-emerging behind Brady Myers, running second of the cars that have made a visit to the pit lane. Now,
I can give you a bit of insight into what their thinking might be now, strategy-wise. They're going to try to make it one more stop from here. Because if you go on board with those drivers, they are full clutch in all the way, trying to coast these cars as much as they can. So they're going to try and stretch this fuel, maybe bank on another safety car, and if they do get one more, then it might open that strategy up for them.
Yeah, might indeed. Madison down, clutching at every opportunity there, bringing the revs back down to idle. The car won't be using any, will only be using a tiny fraction of the fuel that it would otherwise use if you're touring around like usual behind the proven energy safety car. So we did say earlier, Ryan, that the drivers can make it 17 laps max on a full tank of fuel.
Maybe 18. It was 17.76 laps per tank. So a bit of saving could definitely get you that extra lap. So that's 36 laps. That leaves them 3 laps short.
It does. So
Bold strategy.
yeah.
Someone like Dyson, a big oval racer, will certainly have that fuel conservation trick well up his sleeve, though. So I would keep an eye on this for sure. Going to be an interesting one, and a lot of big names taking this option as well. Brady Myers and Madison down, both opting to dive to the pits, along with Stovall and Flock. A lot of fast drivers going for this strategy.
Yeah, and one of them among them, Jake Maloney, who, remember, didn't set a qualifying time and started at the very back of the grid. He's still up 12 places from where he started, so I think advantage Maloney in particular coming towards the end of this safety car period. Dan Stevens will bring the proven energy Porsche Missionar into the pit lane, and now the field falls under the control of Dylan Rudd. So basically, the entirety of the top 17 have not made a visit to pit lane yet. Expect potentially green flag pit stops from these guys if a safety car does not come out in the next few laps. So gear up, get ready, and we shall get this going. Dylan Rudd at the apex of the final corner. Leaves it a little bit later to get on the power. And Lobs Esports will lead across the line to begin the next period of green flag racing. A good start from Luke Rosella, who had a little bit of overlap on Bo Albert at the line, but cannot get the move done into turn 1. Gonna have to wait a few more turns for that. Robbie Gibbs keeps it going just behind him, trying to put some space between himself and Griffin Gardner as the Synergy crew try to find their way forward. Luke Mitchinson chasing down Zach Rattray White here for P11. Paul Young making up a lot of positions too, up to 14th place right now. But don't forget, he's one of the drivers that hasn't come into the pit lane yet. That's very far to the inside for Cameron Jones, as way off the track goes Jake O'Reilly. Got to be careful not to get an unsafe re-entry, and he knew that at the very last moment. To the inside of the circuit he will go to re-emerge back onto the track without further issue.
Rosella obviously had the countdown to that launch, got an excellent restart and almost had Albert into turn 1, but Albert was extremely deep. I thought he was going to crash straight into the back of James Scott. He did well to stay ahead of Luke Rosella, split up the Lobs Esports train at the front of the field. Robert Gibbs going with them in the first half a lap here. As we look back through the rest of the field, it's clean so far as they get out of the hairpin. Bit of side-by-side action back here. That was Kurt Stenberg in the distinctive red Trans-Tasman racing scheme, just filtering his way through the field, of Jake Maloney there as well. Still the most places gained, even with that pit stop.
Yeah, excellent job from Jake Maloney so far, and that's a lot of airtime for the left side tyres there. Looks like a slowdown, unfortunately, for Adam Briggs. Too much curb in the final chicane as Dylan Rudd sets the fastest lap so far. And so the Synergy 22 is placed all the way down to 19th. It's a shame there for Briggsy. And that means that the likes of Brady Myers, Andrew Dyson and Madison Down have started to really make a dent in the cars that have not taken a pit stop yet. Remember, they wouldn't have just taken fuel, they would have taken tyres as well. And we're almost at the point in the race where the pace of the tyres starts to drop off. It's around about 10 to 15 laps, around about that period, that you're going to start seeing cars on older tyres start to go slower. Meanwhile, the drivers that have pitted, they will be in the prime phase of grip for these tyres. We get a double view of Bo Albert's driving here. He's got a picture-in-picture right there with his footwork in the top left of the Zoom feed there. He's certainly fending off Luke Rosella like an absolute veteran right now. Oh,
Robert
yeah.
Gibb lost out to Gardner. He lost out to Freer, almost lost it over that little kink coming out of turn 10. That's turn 11. And now he's under pressure from Rehan Leonard. He'll have to try and be brave on the brakes here. He's on the outside. Who's going to give it? Will be no one. Leonard's turned on the racing line in front of Gibbs. He gets the wall as well. And Leonard escapes off the line. But that's 2 cars now going to fall well down the order.
It's such a shame for Rehan Leonard. Robbie Gibbs, I think, was entitled to a bit of the racetrack on the inside, but it's very difficult to give room through the final chicane. There's really only one line that works. So let's see what race control has to say about that. Leonard all the way down to 25th now. He's had good races from further back, but we'll have to wait and see what the winner of this round last season can do. Already putting the Altus Australia car behind him and looking to make further moves up.
I think Paul Young copped a slowdown, taking avoiding action to that crash as well. So unfortunate for him, he slotted in just ahead of Leonard there on the racetrack in that bronze coloured scheme. Griffin Gardner ended up in place out of the race, moved out too much. That's why it wasn't Gardner, sorry, who was racing with it. Was Robert Gibbs, wasn't it? Here's the replay. This is Free getting up the inside of Gibbs. This started it all. Gibbs just got hip checked out wide a little bit.
Whoa, that's a big slide.
Whopper.
Yeah, so Leonard tried to take advantage of that. Gibbs immediately going defensive. Leonard had the advantage coming down the straight there. And I think probably, you know, under most circumstances, should have given a bit of room, but, you know, it's the final couple of corners at Montreal. It's very difficult to do.
So Robert Gibbs pressing on in 12th position as I just spied one of the Altus cars coming to pit road.
It looks like Mike Taliancic there. It's going to be the 3rd time that he's visited pit lane here. The first time was after his contact with Kenneth Latta, and he just drove through the pits there. I think that was the only option that Tally could have, and that's lost him a lot of time already. That was under green flag conditions when that happened. So Michael gets a pit stop done, 9.7 seconds in the box, and he'll emerge back out onto the racetrack in about 32nd position, just ahead of Kenneth Latta by 9 seconds. So we'll keep an eye here on the front of the field still. Dylan Rudd, James Scott and Bo Albert remain your top 3, but Luke Rosella has managed to work his way back up into 4th, and let's see if he has anything to fight with coming on to the final stretch of the circuit. Albert has been driving really well right now. He's been dealing with the pressure beautifully, and this top 4 starting to leave Griffin Gardner and Tom Freer behind.
It's a very close battle, and for these Lobs esports drivers, they probably want to work together to get away, if they can, from Bo Albert. We might not see a fight between Scott and Rudd just as yet, but if Albert starts pressuring Scott, he'll feel even more incentivized to go and try and pass Dylan Rudd for the lead of this race, while Luke Rosella wants to make up for lost ground. Started this car on pole position, don't forget, lost out with that poor launch off the line. Trying to
problem for Myers, slow
through.
down.
That drops Myers down to 15th. Is that Robert Gibbs? Thought about a move. It's definitely Robert Gibbs. He's got no rear deck lid. He's into the back of him into turn 2.
Yeah, I think Myers is still trying to clear the slowdown there, and from what I can see, it has just been cleared now. So Myers can resume full racing speed, but that's going to hurt the 2022 V8SCOPS champion in his bid for a top 10 finish.
You should know, if he was clearing the slowdown on the racing line, you cannot do that. You have to get offline to clear those slowdowns. Cause an incident by clearing that slowdown on the racing line, you are at fault no matter what. So I think the radio is blowing up a bit about that one from Adam Briggs, who's called that into race control.
Yeah, understandable. In a series like V8SCOPS, you're going to be seeing drivers get on race control for almost anything that happens out there. And no wonder this is one of the top V8 series in the country, and the top 3 drivers in points at the end of the season who are not already in with a shot will be invited to the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series for 2025. So there's plenty for drivers to race for in this series, and I do love that. You know, the Pro Invitational Series was sort of started up as a counterpart series to V8SCOPS, but I like the way that arrangement has sort of brought the V8 community well together in the AusNZ iRacing scene. Almost any V8 series, V8 Vets included, has an option there to bring drivers from that series to the very top.
It does, and it's fantastic to see the support as well from most of Australia of that series, bringing that connection through real life and into the sim.
Always fantastic to see when the community comes together like that. The opposite of coming together right now for Bo Albert. He's not really making a dent in the top 2 right now, and Luca Rosella is starting to get ever closer to him to try and lock out the top 3 positions for Lobs Esports once more. And we said that they were driving away from Griffin Gardner and Tom Freer a lap ago. It doesn't seem like that's the case now. Freer's looking very aggressive into the hairpin on the brakes. Gardner just not quite gearing up the exit like he wants to. It seems like that 9.5 number 1 is much stronger around the twistier half of the circuit than it is on this straight half.
Just a little bit further back, Zach Rattray-White moved himself up to P8 with a bold dive on Sean McNamara at the hairpin. Little hip check at the apex, but moved himself up cleanly. How's the hang time from Rosella through the second part of the chicane? I don't know how he's kept that off the wall. Pushing the limits in those cars right now.
Yeah, a lot of skill in these machines. These are all drivers on screen who know how to push those limits and ride that ragged edge. Albert with a much narrower exit from turn 2, trying his best to put some distance between himself and Luca Rosella. Catch back up to James Scott and Dylan Rudd. So there it is, drive-through penalty for Robert Gibbs for that contact with Jordan Ross on lap 1. Now, there was a lot that went on in those opening laps, to race control only just getting to those incidents now. Robbie Gibbs is going to have to take a tour through the lane. He's not going to be able to get his first compulsory pit stop out of the way in the course of that. He also won't be able to repair that damage to the rear of his car either, so that's going to be a big blow.
Top 6 have got an absolute margin on Dylan O'Shea here at the line. It was 5 seconds from the back of Tom Freer to the front of Dylan O'Shea, who's sort of leading the rest of the pack at the moment. First car that's pitted, running in 12th in this group. Andrew Dyson there in prime position at the moment. If he escapes any tap on the wrist from race control over that pit entry, defensive pit entry under safety car.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is an argument for a penalty for Dyson, because he technically did pass Rehan Lienage on the way into the pit lane. Again, it's a consequence of the pit entry here at Montreal. I bang on about it every single time. Banging is the order of the day for the curbs as well. How much of an angle was Rosella getting there? That car was almost 45 degrees sideways.
And a racing incident from race control called for the lap 1 contact between Sebastian Flock and Dylan Pereira, and a racing incident as well for the contact between Andre Youssef and the 92 down at the hairpin, Brady Myers. That was when Youssef got turned as they were 3 wide.
Yeah, makes sense. Everyone was together there in that section, and I don't think there was much that any driver could have done other than back right out to avoid that incident. Speaking of Dylan Pereira, he and Rehan Lienage both having taken their first compulsory pit stops for Phoenix Racing Team. So it looks like Phoenix are probably banking on this race staying green to the very end. They've decided to run the tank out almost for that first stint, and they'll be all right with 1 stop to go from here. But one stint is going to have to be a lap longer than the other, I would imagine. A 15 lap and a 16 lap stint to end things off for those cars. So the top 6 cars have broken away from this pack here with Dylan O'Shea, Zach Rattray White and Sean McNamara all in a line here. It's a battle of 1,009,500 for last position in the top 7, and we see a Trans-Tasman car peeking its way out behind there. Speaking of Trans-Tasman, Kurt Stenberg missing his bonnet lid. Now, I've seen plenty of occasions where Stenny has had panels missing from his car over the years. He's a great driver. He certainly brings his all to everything, but unfortunately just has a habit of being around incidents and getting banged up a little bit. He's still keeping a great amount of pace, though, in the TTR number 47. Jamie Dyke having made the move on him here at the first turn. This is what took out Stenny's bonnet lid. Sebastian Flock just getting off the throttle early into turn 2, and not much Stenny could have done otherwise.
Some more updates from race control. No further action between Blake Warboys and Jamie Stovall for their incident on lap number 2. But we do have a 5-second time penalty coming the way of Connor Nixon for his contact on lap number 3 with Kenneth Latta.
Yeah, that's going to hurt Connor Nixon. Currently racing just inside the top 20. As things stand right now, that's going to put him down to 25th, around where Paul Young is. But remember, we're still not even halfway through this race. And so, depending on what Nixon does further on, could be looking at still finishing in the top 20, depending on how things go.
Absolutely, and Kenneth Latta, who was part of a few incidents in that span of time, has no further action on his other piece of contact, which was with Taliantich on pit entry.
Paul Young, meanwhile, into the lane, and I'm not seeing a penalty listed for that, so looks like that's a scheduled pit stop there for the Phase 4 Motorsports number 40.
We're on to lap 17 here, so this is around the time that we'd expect everyone to come in. We have that safety car that'll extend the stint a little bit for some of these drivers, and we'll see most of the field dive in, and it will release those cars that have already made their stop and are trying to make use of those fresh tyres. They're some of the fastest cars on the track, actually, with the exception of that top 6 is Paul Young. You can see the speed difference as he dove into pit lane. Those cars in front trying to take the chicane.
Yeah, it looked like a nice move there as well, coming into the chicane with actually a lot of speed lost. See, that's what I keep harping on about with these final 2 turns. You got to take them at basically single line and a very high speed. If you're side by side, you end up costing yourself more than a second, I think, in terms of lap time. So, front of the field should be making their way into the pits very shortly. But they are going to stay out for at least one more lap here. They would have had the opportunity to save a lap or 2 of fuel under the safety car.
Here we go. Drive-through penalty coming the way of Andrew Dyson for passing under safety car. And he has taken that immediately, almost caused a crash as he came into pit lane there. That'll be hugely disparaging to him. He was in position to take the lead of this race once those cars pitted in front.
Indeed.
And now he's pitting. Well, you can't do that.
No, he'll have to serve that penalty on another lap there, will Andrew Dyson. And that also brings into question, well, Andrew Dyson did pass Rehan Leonage, but with Dyson slowing down to make it into the lane, one of the Trans-Tasman cars also passed him as well. Does race control take a look at that too?
I'm sure that'll be the argument from Dyson and his spotter, whoever he's got crew chiefing for him. I think it was raised via the in-game text chat, so we'll see what comes of that as well. I think the TTR car probably will be fine though, as Dyson wasn't exactly in the entry line.
No, and Dyson was in the process of avoiding action on the Phoenix car, so that's something. It's a complicated situation, I think, and one that we obviously can't put a full decision on. Race control will obviously be working hard to find a resolution to that. End of the lap, and the top 6 have stayed out once more. It looks like at the very least we're going to be seeing them pitting at the end of this lap, but will there be any takers here from 7th on back? No, there won't be. And, well, we keep an eye on Madison Down here, who is now the leader of the cars that have pitted. He's right on the back of these guys. And into the pits will come Adam Briggs.
Oh, what's going on there?
Oh, all
Big
right.
news, checks them all up into turn number 2.
Yeah, righto.
Picking those cars up. It's Dylan O'Shea at the head of the queue. Zach Rattray White side by side. Madison Down up the inside of Luke Mitchinson.
Yep, took advantage of the check up there and managed to nab a position out of it. So what happened here at the front? Oh, just enough room being given on the outside, but a big slide for the 9.5 Mustang on the way in. And yeah, that just created a massive check up for everybody behind. Now, worth noting, Down, Myers, everybody who pitted under the safety car now has 13 laps done on those tyres. Now, what do we always say is the point at which the tyres start dropping off in pace? Around about lap 10 to 15. Now, the first couple of those laps would have been under safety cars, so they wouldn't have been using them up, but they certainly have now. They'll be hoping that all of these guys that haven't pitted in front of them get out of the way and allow them to cool their tyres down. Let's see what the top 6 does here. Bo Albert dropping off the back of Dylan Rudd and James Scott. They will all fly into the lane and try to make up some time on the braking zone. They all managed to slow down in time for the pits, I think. Side by side for Dylan O'Shea coming into the lane. And that's drama. Oh, that's big. Oh no, Zach Rattray White sent into the tyre bundles there on pit lane entry. That's not what you want to see.
I could feel that bubbling all the way from the hairpin. Rattray White went for the move on Dylan O'Shea, but had a little wiggle through the apex. That allowed O'Shea to cross over. They were lockstep. Here we go, here's the replay. Gets the move done, but just can't arrest that speed mid-corner. Rattray White comes back alongside him on the exit, and they get ever closer as they get down towards the hairpin, and eventually they run out of room.
They do indeed. Now, this will be interesting here. Keep an eye on the Mustang on the right. So Dylan O'Shea actually gets tapped a little bit here coming into the pit lane, and that's what unsettles him and sends him into Rattray White. Now, you can obviously make the argument that they shouldn't have been side by side in the first place, but there was a mitigating factor there.
Yeah, I don't see any action coming off that. Rattray White held a straight line coming into pits, and it's just a little bit of a side-by-side suddenly kicked Dylan O'Shea sideways, and yeah, couldn't arrest the speed, as you mentioned. So they both pit. Dylan O'Shea has been stationary for a long time based off that graphic.
They both got iRacing black flags for speeding on the way into the pits. Obviously, both of them were trying to regain control of their cars and couldn't focus on slowing down for the pit entry line. Oh, I'm seeing an issue here. Robbie Gibbs is very slow right now. Is he blown his engine? Oh dear. I saw him like nearly stopped on the way down to the hairpin. And I mean, he's been lapping since taking his penalty, but seems like the car might have just given up on him here. Can he make it back to pit lane is the question.
Coming out of turn 9, it just ran out.
Oh, that's a shame. Big shame for Robbie Gibbs. After fighting for a top 5 position early on, there's not much else he can do. And the question is, can he maintain enough momentum here to make it back to the pits while still rolling? Otherwise, we're going to be seeing him stopped on this straight, and that will undoubtedly be another safety car. Unless, of course, he can make it to an opening in the wall, and race control will be able to allow him to tow. This is out of turn 9 here. And yeah, the engine just goes there. Looks like his revs were a bit high on the downshift into second, and I think that might have just made the 5-litre V8 engine go, no thanks. Still touring slowly. Speeds dropped down to 27 k's an hour for Robbie Gibbs. Now, this is going to be difficult here. He's dropping a bit more speed. I think he's going to come to a stop here. Oh, gently does it. Sebastian Flock probably thought he could get a free slipstream out of that, but not much.
There's no slipstream effect to be found from a car that isn't moving. And he is now officially requesting a tow.
Look at the smile on Sebastian Flock's face. He's certainly having a lot of fun out there.
This would be a relief for any drivers who had a black flag and fell off the back of the pack. They will now get the chance to close all the way back up, except Andrew Dyson, who never served his black flag.
No, you're going to have to bring that into the pits and under green flag conditions besides, because as the proven energy safety car comes out of the lane, you can't exactly serve a drive-through penalty under safety car because it won't give you the full disadvantage that the penalty is intended for. Now, we're hearing that Robbie Gibbs ran out of fuel. I think that is going to tell the story there. So
he was well short as well. That's like half a lap almost.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how that transpired. I mean, Gibbs had gone through the pit lane once for his drive-through penalty, but yeah, maybe he was just trying to eke it out a little further to get to the end of the race on a couple of shorter stops. I mean, I honestly don't know at this stage, but no surprise to see that the Trans-Tasman Commodore duo of Myers and Down, followed by Jake Maloney in the Mustang, going to make their way in for their second stop. But this is interesting for everyone coming under the safety car to the lane. There's 23 laps remaining in the race. That is a good sight longer than a full fuel stint, even with fuel saved under safety car.
Yep, sorry, I was just getting some more info on you there. We had written up a drive-through for Dyson on our screens, but he was actually given a stop and hold. That's why he came in and stopped, so he didn't take service there. So he has served his penalty.
Okay, so there's from in-sim penalty applications, there's no way for us to know if it's a stop and hold or a drive-through, but obviously Race Control does post full details of penalties in Discord, and I don't always check that, so my bad. I will try and improve on that. Speaking of penalties, a 15-second time penalty for the 019. That's Cameron Jones for contact with the 222, which is Jacob O'Reilly, and that was on lap 8. So the story of that battle concludes. We will find the incident that specifically brought out that penalty, but for now, it looks like James Scott, Dylan Rudd, and Bo Albert look pretty safe here. Having already taken their first mandatory pit stop, and I think under no circumstances would they want to come in under this safety car, because that will completely ruin their strategy to the end. The question is, Madison Down, Brady Myers, Jake Maloney, they elevated themselves up with pitting on the safety car. This was the incident, and I think we did catch this live. Jacob O'Reilly getting hit by Jones into lap 8. Yeah, I do remember that incident, so finally, Race Control have gotten around to that one in the midst of everything else they're working on.
We'll see how long the safety car lasts as well. It'll open up the strategies for quite a few drivers. Robert Gibbs now given permission to get on out of there. And it leaves James Scott at the front of the field. Luke Rosella has lost out a bit, down to P6 now.
Yeah, he has, actually. It looks to me like it was a very slow trip through the lane. His pit stop time looks pretty on the money compared to everyone else in the top 6, but his trip through the lane was almost 6 seconds slower than that of James Scott. So that will obviously make the job a little bit harder for Luke Rosella in the second half of this race.
A 15-second time penalty has come the way of Cameron Jones for contact with Jacob O'Reilly.
Yep, we just took a look at all of that.
I'm paying attention, aren't I?
Yep. You're dedicating your attention to other things like clarifying stuff behind the scenes, Ryan. Rattray White, meanwhile, comes into the box. I would assume to get repairs done after the unfortunate sending into the tyre barrier. We also see that Kenneth Latter and Dylan O'Shea are making their way in. O'Shea, of course, the driver that made contact with Rattray White coming into the pits a couple of laps ago. And it looks like a regular scheduled pit stop for O'Shea. Doesn't look like there's much in the way of damage for that car.
Yeah, we've still got 31 cars running. Dylan O'Shea, the last of them. Zach Rattray White, as you mentioned, in pit lane. See whether he gets back out. Robert Gibbs is on the back of a flatbed, technically, as he waits to get released back to his car, but he should be able to go out and collect some points. It's only round 1, but 3 point matters, doesn't it, Reese? Doesn't matter if it's the last round of the first round.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Even with drop rounds, you want to try and get the maximum result you can at every single round of a championship like V8SCOPS. Speaking of flatbeds, Blake Delaney, of course, is on one as well. That's the second of our 3 cars that have retired from the race. The first being Jordan Ross, who unfortunately only made it 1 lap in the race before deciding to call it quits after getting sent into the wall at the first chicane on the first lap. So
there are 22 laps to go when they restart, and we think a bit of fuel saving. You've got 18 laps in the tank. Maybe that becomes 19 if you're very good. If there's another safety car, can they make it home from here with a little top-up? Be an interesting strategy for anyone if they choose to dive in here, play their cards right. You never know. Safety cars bring safety cars. We know that in iRacing. It's very much true.
Yeah, well, will we see another one after this one concludes in just a few moments? The Proven Energy Porsche Mission R will make its way back into the lane. It's a very quick machine, isn't it, the Porsche Mission R? Plenty of power available in those electric motors. Got up to about 250 on the way into the lane.
Decent driver behind the wheel, and Dan Stevens as well.
Very true. Now then, last couple of corners here for James Scott, who has taken the race lead from Dylan O'Shea in the pit cycle. Now up to the 088 to decide when to go, and it looks like at the final chicane is the place. Bo Albert wasn't quite on the money there on the restart, and there's some overlap between Griffin Gardner and Tom Freer as they make their way across the line. Side by side coming into turn 1 and 2 between Synergy and 9.5 will give Lobs Luke Rosella the chance to have a go at a top 5 position, and they are still making up time on the drivers behind. Remember, Madison Down is the leader of the cars that have completed the compulsory pit stops, but still question marks over whether or not they'll have to visit the pits again.
Good move that from Tom Freer. Got around the outside of turn 1, held his nerve, had the inside for turn 2, and got the move done on Griffin Gardner off the back of a fantastic restart up into 4th, and now we'll try to latch on to the back of Bo Albert in P3. It's still Scott from Rudd, then Albert, your top 3 cars at the moment. Oh, big swapper from Madison Down, and just kicked it out of the fence. Slow down for Bo Albert.
Oh no. Well, this could be another position here for TTR number 72, who tries to go for the inside. The door just left open a crack by Bo Albert and puts the power down on the exit of the hairpin. He's cleared that slowdown just in time.
Oh, Madison Down shot for an ever-closing gap, and that was remarkably tight. The good heads-up driving from both he and Bo Albert to avoid a collision, and they escape out to survive another lap as we complete the first lap back under green flag conditions. 21 laps to go on the line here.
What that ultimately does is promote Tom Freer up into P3. Griffin Gardner now trying to keep Luke Rosella behind him. It seems like
Curtis
Griffin...
Scanlon's been turned around and off into the wall.
Oh, no.
It was contact with Andrew Dyson, who finds himself in more trouble, and I think there'll be another slap on the wrist from race control.
Yeah, potentially. It's not the first time we've seen two cars come together at high speed into the opening corners of the lap here at Montreal. And looking at this, yeah, I'd say Stenny did nothing wrong here. Did open the door a little bit for Dyson to get through, but at those speeds, when both cars are turning right, yeah, if there's even a tiny bit of contact, then that is what's going to result. Number 79, Rehan Leonage, down to, well, actually up to 8th position. Remember, we thought that he was going to be down and out of the running after the contact with Robbie Gibbs at the final chicane, but he's made a good recovery, hasn't he? Only one pit stop on the board, but he's taken advantage of the safety cars here and moved himself up into the top 10.
Just a couple spots behind him is Brady Myers. Remember, we saw him serve that slowdown right in front of the field on the racing line. He's got the 5-second penalty for his efforts there.
Yeah, he has indeed. So 5 seconds added to Brady Myers' race time. Now, once the race gets into its final couple of laps, we'll start to detail exactly where drivers with time penalties will end up. But Tom Freer is looking mighty quick, isn't he? He's still one of the drivers who's only had one pit stop so far, but man, he is looking fast. Looks like the first driver into the 1-minute 33-second bracket.
Working hard to get away, create a gap. But I tell you what, that fuel is not going to magically appear. They're going to have to make another pit stop at the end of this race, and it'll be a short one too, just to splash and dash. Whoever can save the most amount of fuel, have the least amount of time stationary, could find themselves leapfrogging into position to get a podium, get a win. If you're running P2, if you're Dylan Rudd, if you can stay close enough in that substitute of James Scott, maybe you can save enough fuel down the straights, leapfrog Scott that way in the lane, as a 15-second time penalty comes the way of Cameron Jones. Again,
it looks like it's the same penalty that we already mentioned twice. Oh, that's Dyson around at the hairpin. Oh, a little bit of contact with the Altus Australia 777. Taliancic gets spun around, and that's blocked the track for some cars on the outside of the hairpin. Whoops-a-daisy.
Yeah, in my defence of that penalty there, they only just issued it that time round.
Yes, they'd been talking about it for a while, but oh, okay. Dyson not at fault for that one. Blake Warboys was the other car involved there, and yeah, that ultimately spun Taliancic around. Looks like Brenton Hobson was involved in that crush as well.
Rough day for Andrew Dyson. The bright blue simracing.com DPR car.
So this is the view on board from Hobson coming into the hairpin here. And that's the, oh yeah, that's unfortunate. The recovery from Robbie Gibbs and Hobbo getting smacked around there. That was enough to give him a mechanical black flag. Brenton Hobson currently in the pits now, getting that damage repaired. That's an absolute disaster for driver of the number 88. The 088 is having no such issues, actually extending the gap in the lead over his teammate Dylan Rudd. Gap now out to 9/10 of a second. But we'll keep an eye on Tom Freer with his excellent run of times here. He's still running right on pace with the leaders. The only car faster than him was Griffin Gardner and Luke Rosella.
Yeah,
James Scott just beating him by a 1,000th of a second on the last lap.
James Scott stretching here ever so slightly. Tom Freer's doing a phenomenal job. It's not as tightly packed as it was before that safety car. It feels like they've all gone out of fuel conservation mode.
Yeah, seems like it. I don't know if it was the audio from the production feed or my in-sim audio, but I was keeping an eye on Dylan Rudd coming into the hairpin, and I heard someone clutching ahead of him, and I think it might have been James Scott. So in those very heavy braking zones, Scott is still trying to save a little bit of extra fuel.
And you'll never guess what Cameron Jones has. No, it's still just the one penalty for Cameron.
Oh, lordy. Wouldn't that be funny if it was like 3 15-second penalties in a row?
Well, I've given him about 45 seconds worth of penalties so far tonight.
Yeah. Looks like those repairs for Brenton Hobson were over very quickly. He's back out on the racetrack as up here we're seeing Rehan Leonage and Madison Down fighting tooth and nail over 7th spot. Down up 11 places. Rehan only up 3, but remember, Leonage had to make quite a bit of a recovery himself from his spin earlier on.
Madison Down leading the way for those drivers on that alternate strategy who pitted under that first safety car.
Yeah, so expecting a little bit more from Down here. Potentially another pit stop towards the end. The contact between Blake Warboys and Kurt Stenberg at turn 1, meanwhile, no further action on that. Now, was that the incident that lost Stenny? No, it wasn't. It's a different incident to the one we saw on board with Stenberg where he lost his bonnet.
Stenberg's had a very rough night.
Oh, he has. That's almost par for the course for Stenny, and I hate to say it. You know, he like I say, he always gives it his all whenever he races in V8SCOPS, but if he doesn't have some panels missing by the end of it, it's certainly not a typical race for Kurt Stenberg.
Andre Youssef into the lane, taking a splash of fuel and tyres. 9.1 seconds to take for the tyres, so if you're going to pit now, best to take that, use that fresh tyre advantage. If you pit late on, like with 5 to go, you're probably not worth taking those tyres.
Indeed. Well, any time from now is a good time to come in for the final stop, and you'll be fully fueled to the end. Andrew Dyson still trying desperately to hold on to a few positions here. Where he started in 15th.
Former teammate in behind him as well, and Dylan O'Shea, who's just been given his final warning from race control. Good move up the inside though for the 9. Oh, and Dyson gets turned by Latta. And I tell you what, I don't think the Red Mist will be able to get any redder inside that helmet of Andrew Dyson right now.
Yeah, he's going to be mad, I'm pretty sure. It's all fallen off here for the DPR number 41.
Was running ahead of Madison Down, would have been in P7 if he'd held his nerve up there.
Indeed he would have. Such a shame for Dyson, but remember, it's the first round of a long season, so there's still plenty of opportunities for him to get things done from here and maybe use this round as a drop round. Meanwhile, big news, Luke Rosella with a slowdown penalty. Looks like that was picked up in the first chicane. And Madison Down will take advantage and move around the outside. Rehan Leonage will try, but Rosella shuts the door.
Good save. Leonage almost turned him back the right way. Rosella will lose out to Pereira. And Leonage steals himself and presses on. Leave that to the adjudication of race control. I'll point out as well, it looked like Rosella was serving his slowdown on the race line through turn 5, so that might get taken into consideration.
Potentially. I mean, Leonage was definitely alongside when Rosella started moving back onto the racing line, so unsure whether or not race control will assign any kind of penalty to Leonage because of that. This is where it happened. I think it was actually in turn 1, potentially, that the slowdown was picked up. So through goes Bo Albert. Rosella still trying to clear that slowdown here.
Very slow off the exit there, isn't he?
Oh, he is. And he doesn't have much choice but to let them through here.
Yeah. It's really hard to tell there if he's still serving or if he's just trying to get speed back up, and then, of course, goes defensive, and there's the contact. A little bit of potentially now.
Yeah, potentially. Well, we will move swiftly on and keep an eye on Leonage, see whether or not he can catch back up to Madison Down here. These guys are making up some pretty good time on the likes of Bo Albert and Griffin Gardner. Yes, the laps were a little bit slower due to making their way past Rosella, but I think Leonage and Down are very well placed here to potentially catch up to Bo Albert for a position in the top 5. but will they have to pit again? We know that Leonage is going to have to pit again. So is Pereira. Actually, no. Dylan Pereira has already made his second mandatory pit stop. That's interesting.
Last time by, James Scott put half a second on Dylan Rudd. That gap's now out to 2.3 seconds, and Tom Freer is looking the quicker of the two drivers here in the fight for second place. It's quickly becoming the fight for second place and not first.
Yeah, James Scott, once he gets into the lead of a race and he isn't feeling pressured, he just keeps putting down those times. Dylan Rudd ran a tenth slower than Tom Freer last time by. What's the lap time comparison going to be like when they come across the line here? Dylan Pereira, meanwhile, oh, actually, that's a pit for Luke Rosella. So he's decided now is the time to come in for his second mandatory pit stop. Slow down for Bo Albert. And he's going to be in trouble here versus Pereira. Tries to protect it. Coming into turn 2. Look at this. It leaves the door open for Brady Myers to try and have a go at the Phoenix Racing Team number 61. Jake Maloney looking on from a bit further back. He'll be hoping that something comes of this for him.
Oh, Brady Myers almost shoving Pereira out of turn number 4. We're seeing more and more of these mistakes. Drivers picking up slowdowns, just chopping too much of these corners off as the race goes on and drivers grow tired. We are 1 hour into this race now. 14 laps still to go.
Yeah, man, it's been a long and difficult race here. And remember, this is a shortened race format from the original standard round for V8SCOPS, which was a full 250 Ks. It was about around 50-something laps, I think, is the usual race length from Montreal. Considering the amount of safety cars we've had, though, the race time has been extended by quite a margin. Let's keep an eye out here. Evolution Racing Team versus former Evolution Racing Team. Scott Gamble here ahead of Sebastian Flock. This is the battle for 13th place right now, and it's a big pack of cars that also involves the likes of Connor Nixon and Jamie Dyke, the other two drivers who were on the Split 2 podium.
Working away from Split 2 up the order towards a fairly respectable result in Split 1. Let me rephrase that. Any result in Split 1 is respectable given the effort to just get into the competition.
Indeed.
But they have done particularly well to climb towards the top 20 here.
They have. Well,
Igniter Racing too. That's 60 odd laps.
Oh yeah. The top drivers in Split 2 are some of the hardest working of all V8SCOPS drivers on a given race night. So 4 cars going for the pit lane that time by. Jamie Dyke, Dylan Pereira, Dylan O'Shea, and Paul Young. And it looks to me like Dyke, having taken his 3rd visit to the pit lane, has jumped out in 25th place. And I think one of those visits to the lane was just a tour through it. So not much else he can do now other than consolidate and try to make his way to the end. Flock, meanwhile, still trying to chase down Scott Gamble. The WKMP Commodore is looking nice and stable there, barely a hint of oversteer on the exit of the hairpin.
Last time by, Flock was just over 1/10 of a second quicker than Scott Gamble, so slowly bringing that gap down as into the lane comes Tom Freer. Griffin Gardner comes with him, and another one in the background. So a trio in. That's Leonage, indeed. And Luke Mitchinson also pits from underneath the rear wing of Sebastian Flock.
Yep, Sean McNamara jumping in there too. So the 295 Mustangs there making their way in. Or 295 cars, I should say. Blake Warboys also comes in, as well as Kenneth Latta. It seems like Cameron Jones has decided to call it quits on that stint too. Going to be a nice short stint to the end for all of those drivers. Still thinking about whether or not... Oh, yeah, Andrew Dyson. That's a bit of a problem for him coming out of the first turn as Tom Freer made the exit. there's a big advantage that you can get actually coming out of the pits at Montreal. You cut out turn 1 and your speed coming back onto the racetrack is a lot faster than it is if you're taking the racing line. There's Stenberg, and that was one of the Lobs Esports cars. That was Rosella. Well, Kurt Stenberg's car is looking decidedly sorry now, and I think maybe has a bit of suspension damage too. You can see how he's jerking a little bit from side to side. There's some issues there with the steering column of that Trans-Tasman Commodore now.
I think I'm probably going to have to start referring to that colour scheme as punching bag red.
Yeah, it's a real shame for Stenberg. You know, to extend on my point from earlier about how you know, it's uncommon to see him with a clean car at the end of the race. That's not a comment on Stenberg's driving. It's a comment on what's usually everyone else around him. Because I mean, obviously they were racing for position here, but Rosella, the faster driver, having just come out of the pits, but Stenberg is entitled to a defence here, but you could argue shuffled out of the way a little bit there.
Yeah, I think Rosella just didn't lift off enough and found that understeer as more drivers into the lane. Stenberg presses on. I'm surprised his car is still going, to be honest with you. He's done well, that car escaping a meatball, and he's going to fire out right in front of Andrew Dyson, who just served his second black flag of the day. That was for the contact with Stenberg earlier.
Yeah, back on lap 26. So this is the way things stand right now. We're still owed a pit stop from James Scott.
Oh, late dive. Dyson thought about it. He'll be hot-headed. He'll be very hot-headed here. There's a high chance of this going spectacularly wrong as he pulls to the inside of Kurt Stenberg, and I think Stenberg will make this one relatively easy. He doesn't seem to have much straight line speed left in that Trans-Tasman racing car.
No, aerodynamic performance at a premium there, as into the pits comes James Scott for his second mandatory stop. Madison Down will move through into the race lead, having already cleared his mandatory pit stops. But remember, Down has been out there for 14 laps now. We are still owed another pit stop from the Trans-Tasman number 72. And if there isn't another safety car, Down will be in trouble for position. See the straight line speed there from Stenberg. It is really suffering as, oh, that's big for Rosella for serving the slowdown on the racing line. You called it, Ryan.
Yep. The note for, he's not happy about that on the race control channel is Luke Rosella. The note from race control is that he fixed it up at the final chicane, and it took him all the way until the end of sector 1 to actually clear it. So an ample opportunity to get it done and didn't do so. Stenberg may have just ended his suffering coming into pit lane there, and he has. Nope, he's still going. Screen flickered off for a second. I thought Stenberg had hopped out of the car, but he's still going. He's going to press on and rejoin with his sparring partner.
Well, I mean, if there's one thing you can be sure of when it comes to Kurt Stenberg is that he doesn't give up. Even when he does have damage like that, he will continue pressing on right until the end, until the car gives up on him, because he knows the value of getting every point possible. He's gotten numerous top 10 championship finishes in V8SCOPS history just by that attribute. So that's typical Stenny in action. Once again, this is the battle here for the effective race lead. James Scott having just taken his second stop. Tom Freer took his coming up to 3 laps ago, and Freer is still looking mighty quick. This is going to be interesting. Freer
was ahead into the hairpin. James Scott just made the move to take the effective lead back away.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the story is told with the pit stop times. Freer was only stopped for 13.2 seconds in the box. James Scott, 17 seconds stop for him. And so now, Scott needs to try and drive away from him after making that textbook dive at the hairpin.
9 to go. Those cars of Down, Maloney, Myers still pressing on. We think surely that they can't make it to the end, but maybe they are the ultimate masters of fuel saving. We'll find out. Either way, I think if they're pitting any point in the next few laps, they're probably starting to look at not taking tyres, because that does take 9 seconds, and they are only going to need a splash at this stage to get home. As we see the fight between Maloney and Scott on the times is at 15 seconds between them at the moment.
Yes, and a trip through the pit lane would cost you about that much if you're just taking a splash, so it's going to be tough. Look into the pits goes the Mustang of Maloney, so he's the first of that crew to blink. Actually, no, he's not. He's the third. Down and Maloney have just come in.
Well, we'll see if Down takes tyres here. I think with 9 to go, you probably still can. Plenty of time left. He does go up on the jacks. Brady Myers takes over the lead of the race.
He does indeed, and he will owe us a pit stop to the end. There goes James Scott back into the effective race lead, but Down and Maloney have already gotten their stops completed. This is going to be interesting. They are still looking at a potential top 5 here. Down makes his way back out. There's Bo Albert, who has already taken his second stop as well, only 2 laps ago.
And keep an eye out on Down with that fresh tyre advantage now. He's not a million miles away from the race lead here.
No, certainly not. Look out for Maloney as well. I think he took tyres too with a 9.5 second stop. So...
Oh, got behind them.
Oh no, oh no, oh dear. This doesn't look good. This is Jamie Dyke, Connor Nixon, Sean McNamara, Chris Coxhead, Adam Briggs, Jamie Stovall, Scott Gamble, Blake Warboys, Dylan O'Shea, Luke Mitchinson. Oh, that's a mouthful. Lots of cars involved in this.
McNamara cranked it sideways coming out of turn number 6. It slowed up. Chris Coxhead, Adam Briggs gets in front of him, and they all sort themselves out into the third chicane as that's Dylan O'Shea swiping across the nose of Blake Warboys. Luke Mitchinson tried to take advantage. That is an angry pack of drivers.
That it is. It's a full-on 10-car pack of drivers as Rayan Leonage gets the move done on Michael Taliancic at the hairpin ahead of these guys. The 951 Sean McNamara has to leave room for Briggs to resume the racing line as Brady Myers comes in for his stop. And James Scott will immediately move through to the front of the field. Myers, I think, is going to lose out big time from this. He's going to come out behind all of these guys. Or is he? Actually, I misread the overlay there. He's going to come out just ahead. Oh, I think he's only just escaped as that's off the track there.
How was the rejoin? That was so tight.
Yeah, that certainly was. Jamie Dyke, I think, throwing caution to the wind there a little bit, and it worked out for him that time, but it's not worked out for him going off the track again at the first chicane. How did this happen to him? He's still serving a slowdown from that, and yeah, a little bit of a bump there. Whoa, okay. Well, it looked like there was a bit of contact there, and it's still not over for Jamie Dyke. McNamara and Coxhead all looking for something here, and Dyke slows down.
And he makes contact with McNamara. There wasn't anything.
Oh, Dylan O'Shea. How on earth did he pull that up?
It's fantastic. There wasn't much Dyke could do there. He picked up a double slowdown as he went through that first chicane. Had to get offline. They were side by side behind him. McNamara did very well in the end, and Dyke, I did see, flash the brake lights to sort of show what he was doing. Gave McNamara a heads up.
Yeah, so this is the view here, and Dylan O'Shea gets on the brakes. I mean, that could have gone any number of ways. I think O'Shea was very lucky that resulted in no contact.
A clean move with none of them off the road is the least likely outcome from what just happened. Yeah. That is a remarkable sequence of corners.
Certainly was. Well, it's gained Dylan O'Shea a few more positions, up into 17th place now, ahead of Scott Gamble, who has been one of the quieter drivers in this group, but still taking advantage of everything going on around him. Gamble's up 9 places from where he started, which is an excellent job there from the WKMP new signing. Biggest mover in the field, though, is Jake Maloney. The 29 is up 29 positions to 6th spot.
He's running just behind Madison Down, who was 1.2 seconds quicker than Tom Freer on that last lap. He was a tenth quicker than James Scott as well, which won't be enough with 5 laps to go at the line here, but he's definitely in with a shout of second place if he can dispatch quickly of Dylan Rudd. Griffin Gardner's a podium spot waiting as well. This could be a golden strategy from Madison Down after qualifying 18th with that early stop and another slowdown being served there. Is that Dyke again?
I think it is. No, it's Adam Briggs.
Oh, it's Synergy car.
Unfortunate there for Briggsy. Hopefully for him, he's served it in time and he won't lose any further places. This is Jamie Dyke down here in P21. Got Andre Youssef, the next car ahead of him. Meanwhile, here's Dylan Rudd fighting with Griffin Gardner, former teammates at 9.5 Sim Sports. Meanwhile, well, Andrew Dyson and Kenneth Latta, we saw them coming together earlier, and it looks like Dyson has been given a warning from race control for that incident. Oh, that was a big tap of the wall there from, was that Tom Freer in the Synergy car? Either way, looks like these three are going to come together very shortly, which is going to give a huge leap up, potentially, for Madison Down.
It is going to be an all-in scrap for the final places on the podium here, as Race Control makes some final adjudications on various comings togethers over the past few laps of this race. No further action on the 55 and the 79 on lap 31. Down's in the best spot here for a shot at the podium, I feel. If he can get by Dylan Rudd, he's right on the bumper of Griffin Gardner with fresher tyres as well, and Tom Freer looks like he's really struggling at the moment. He's the slowest car of this leading group. We look even further back to Bo Albert, trying to find a way up to P7 late on in this race, racing with Luke Rosella, who we're thinking what could have been if he just got that car off the line.
Yeah, that's really where it all started, right? And he's still got a time penalty hanging over his head too. So unfortunate that Luke Rosella's not able to convert his pole position into something more than this. Best he can hope for right now is P7 if all stays the same. Could be 8th here, considering how quick Bo Albert is looking. And that's a nice run down the start-finish straight. This is where the door opens. Albert gets on the brakes and just forces Rosella to take a slightly wider line here, but can't take the outside in turn 2. And not much space to fire it up the inside on exit either, so Rosella is still safe for now.
Look at Tom Freer. He has got an absolute handful of Griffin Gardner, the rear bumper, and Dylan Rudd up there as well. They're nose to tail. Down's just a breath away from joining the fight, and the headlights are being flashed by Griffin Gardner here.
Yeah, he's right on it now. He's getting on the psychological games. Wants to try and unsettle Freer by creating a bit of distraction in the mirrors. But Tom Freer has certainly had enough experience that he knows not to pay attention to that. Defensive, meanwhile. Oh, there goes the inside move
Too
there
deep.
for Griffin Gardner. Yeah, way too deep, but he holds on to it. Tom Freer coming together with Dylan Rudd, and Madison Down is going to sweep through, just avoiding making contact on the exit of the hairpin. That was beautifully done by Madison. Meanwhile, Bo Albert getting through on Luke Rosella for 7th place. But that's very crucial for Madison Down. TTR up to 3rd spot. But for how long? Does Tom Freer have anything to fight back with? Can Dylan Rudd do anything to fight back? They need to keep an eye out for Maloney as well. He's on the same strategy as Madison Down.
And will Griffin Gardner have any questions to answer to race control for that lunge as well? Because, well, in reality, Tom Freer had to take avoiding action there on the entry to that hairpin. And that's what caused the contact with Dylan Rudd. Madison Down got by both of them.
Yeah, best case scenario for Madison Down. Here's the view of it. So Dylan Rudd went defensive on Down, but then there was the big dive from Gardner. Freer and Rudd came together. They both slowed each other up on the exit, and Madison Down saw that the outside of the hairpin was free to take, and through he went.
You know,
there wasn't any contact that resulted from that, but you never know. Could be questions about it. Meanwhile, Albert got by Rosella in a very clean fashion at the hairpin.
From that angle, it does look. Gardner's fine. That's a good move from Gardner. And Tom Freer just tried to turn down in front of Dylan Rudd, who was trying to fill a gap And they made
Oh,
slight
speaking
contact.
of Rudd.
There's the
Oh.
dive. That was deep. A little pinch of the inside front tyre, and he can't get the traction down on the exit. Freya will hold on to that P4 spot for now.
Good job from Freya. He saw the move coming from Dylan Rudd and decided, okay, I'll commit to the outside exit, which can be faster. Meanwhile, just enough room being left there on the outside. Rudd gets on the brakes, and I think Freya will have to let him through there coming into the chicane. It's a one-line only corner, and I think he might have picked up a slowdown as well. Either that or it was too much curb and the car got too unsettled. Well, 2 laps to go. The fighting's still not over for these minor positions. Connor Nixon in 12th spot, holding off a huge train of cars that includes Coxhead, Briggs, O'Shea, McNamara, Gamble and Stovold. And all of them except Stovold have gained bulk positions. Nixon's up 4. Coxhead is up 12 places to 13th. That's a great run.
Well, it's been one of those races. It's just been a bit of push and shove all the way up and down the order, and drivers who've been able to keep their noses clean have found themselves winning out massively in this race. James Scott, none the least of all of them, has emerged at the front with a clean car and a great story to tell if he can finish this one off. There was a slowdown just served there by Adam Briggs. It cost him a couple of spots. He slots in now just ahead of Jamie Stovold. And the battle for P2 will be pretty lively as well, I imagine, as Dan closes it on Gardner. Oh, Abbott still trying to pull away from Luke Rosella.
Brady Myers is right there too. See that? Myers is the... Myers, I think, has the youngest tyres in the field. 6 laps at the end of this lap. So he's the one with the big tyre advantage over everyone else here. Rosella coming up to 13 laps on these tyres. Meanwhile, white flag for James Scott. There's only 4.36 Ks of racing to go here at Montreal. Is there anything Madison Down can do to work his way past Griffin Gardner deep into turn 2? Just avoids getting into the bumper of the 9.5 Sim Sports machine. Once again, you know, these two are former champions of this series and they're driving like it. This is fantastic to see. It is a battle for second, but it's certainly one that is worth watching to the very end of this lap. So many stories to come to conclusion here in the first round of V8SCOPS in 2024. Who comes off best in the battle for second? Who comes off best in the battle for fourth? Tom Freer and Jake Maloney are starting to come together a bit further. Brady Myers has made his way past Luke Rosella for 8th spot. Could be looking at 7th at the very end of it. As they come into the hairpin, James Scott is looking super comfortable here.
Side by side, Scott up the front, up top, and Madison Down looking on the bottom of your screen at Griffin Gardner, but not close enough. Leicester is up out of the hairpin, and that'll probably will end that battle for P2 if Gardner can just get through the final chicane cleanly. And same for James Scott up the front.
An absolutely brilliant drive from the 088 of James Scott. Lobs Esports takes first blood in V8SCOPS 2024. James Scott is your winner of round 1. Griffin Gardner, the reigning champion, will fend off the 3-time champion Madison Down. 2nd and 3rd across the line. Beautifully done. Dylan Rudd, a strong finish in 4th spot. Tom Freer holds on to a top 5 from Jake Maloney, who made up 29 places, and it's still on for moves here further back. Chris Coxhead, 12th place, just holding off Connor Nixon, who I think has a slowdown. He's going to give it up to Dylan O'Shea across the line. Meanwhile, Scott Gamble just holding off Adam Briggs and Jamie Stovold for 16th spot.
Crash in the background at the final corner.
Yep. Still on there. It looks like Kenneth Latta and one of the Vermilion cars there, Jacob O'Reilly, 2 of the drivers that certainly should have had a much better race than they had, but that's going to be the end of it there, going across the line. And with just Andrew Dyson and Kurt Stenberg left to finish the race, I think that's going to end things here. So great way to start off the title defense for Griffin Gardner with a 2nd spot up from 7th. That is magnificent. But those top 3 three of the best drivers in this field right now. Those are your results then. 6.8 seconds is the gap that James Scott has over Griffin Gardner, down completing the podium. Rudd and Freer round out the top 5. Maloney, again, I still can't believe that he made up as many positions as he did, up to 6th. From a lowly 35th and last. Bo Albert comes home in 7th spot. Still a good finish considering he qualified 4th and had to serve a few slowdowns on the way through. Brady Myers, off strategy with his TTR teammates, still gets a top 10 out of it. Luke Rosella would be hoping for a lot better from that first round, from pole position down to 9th. Meanwhile, Sebastian Flock manages to get into the top 10 for Evolution Racing Team after qualifying 13th.
Rehan Leonard comes home less than a second outside the top 10 in the end, finishing 11th after getting mixed up in some drama. Chris Coxhead finishes plus 13 in 12th place after a last gasp pass at the final chicane. Dylan O'Shea just beats Connor Nixon to the line of 13th and 14th. Sean McNamara comes home plus 4 for 15th place. Scott Gamble in 16th ahead of Adam Griggs. We didn't see too much of him today. Seemed to be a pretty quiet race, up 7 for him. Jeremy Stavold, Blake Warboys, and Jamie Dyke comes through from split 2 to finish in 20th.
Paul Young, meanwhile, gains quite a few spots from 32nd up to 21st. Andre Youssef, his qualifying performance was great, 8th place, but unfortunately getting involved in a few crashes, especially on lap 1. Had to settle for 22nd. Luke Mitchinson losing 2 spots from his qualifying down to 23rd. He had a lot of pace to deal with there. Dylan Pereira comes home in 24th place. It could have been a finish up with Leonage were it not for the issues he faced. Kenneth Latta, he was battered about this race. Still finished 25th after 33rd place qualifying, with O'Reilly, Dyson and Stenberg, along with Michael Taliancic, the last drivers to finish on the lead lap. Brenton Hobson comes home 1 lap down, having to get repairs done halfway through the race. Same for Zach Rattray White as well, with a big contact into the pit lane. Cameron Jones, 13 laps down, unfortunate for him, was involved in a couple of penalty assigning incidents. Robert Gibbs retiring after running out of fuel. Blake Delaney and Jordan Ross with some very awful runnings there. Jordan Ross out on the first lap. Synergy 143 will be hoping for a better outing next time. That is the field for V8SCOPS 2024 Round 1. It's a good time for us to bring our podium in for a chat, starting, of course, with the race winner, James Scott. New team for you, James, going to Lobs Esports. I think the perfect way to start your association.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, new team for this year. So, yeah, really looking forward to it. Obviously, kicked off the season with a good win here, but yeah, I think just February or going into March. So there's still a lot of racing to do, but yeah, couldn't have started off on a better foot.
Indeed. It was interesting to see how the safety car affected, or the safety cars affected the race all up. Was it always the plan for you to just stick to your guns when it came to taking those stops when you did, or did you have to make a couple of changes to your original plan?
Knowing the track, I haven't been able to race here for a little while, but yeah, knowing the track and there's a lot of safety cars, I sort of, heading into the race, just kept the strategy really open. I knew with the fuel restriction that was in place tonight, strategy could be tough in one sense, but also made it easier in another sense. But yeah, no, I sort of just stuck to my guns. I knew on that last stop it was going to be close with Tom and Griffin. Lucky I slotted in between those two, and yeah, just controlled it from there.
That you did. Well, starting off your 2024 V8SCOPS campaign with a win is obviously the best possible way to start it. So is there anyone you'd like to thank for that before we let you go?
Yeah, obviously all the guys at Lobs Esports, and our great sponsors with Speed Cafe coming on board for this year, Ryko Performance as well. Make sure you head over there and look at their setup shop. Some really good setups there for the V8 and some other cars as well. Shane and all those guys for getting this all together. I know a lot of work's gone in behind the scenes to get this all off the ground. So yeah, really thanks to him and Jared as well. Both of them hopping in tonight. and yeah, spotting as well. So it made that strategy just a little bit easier. Yeah, but no, really great night for the team, and yeah, looking forward to round 2.
As are we. James Scott, winner of Split 1 here for V8SCOPS at Montreal. Next up on the roster is Griffin Gardner, and I believe Ryan Jones has managed to grab him for a chat about a great start to a title defence.
Well, Griffin, you ended last year as the champion and you're starting your defence, as Reese mentioned, in a very good spot. P2, great points haul, and a nice clean race for you amongst what was some pretty chaotic racing.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit going on out there tonight. I was pretty worried coming in tonight. Didn't really feel comfortable at all this week, but just how I did last year, just somehow grab a result, and that's all we need to do.
Talk us through the opening portion of the race. We saw a lot of chaos up and down the order. Jordan Boys getting turned out of position 5 on the Jordan Ross, getting turned out of position 5 on the grid. How did you navigate that early drama and sort of settle in for the race? What was your outlook?
Yeah, it's just same as usual. Just try to keep the car clean, somehow get through all the shunts going on. But yeah, luckily I was pretty close to that J Ross getting turned there. In that first chicane, it was pretty tight, so I was lucky to get through that.
We saw a few drivers elect to pit under that first safety car. You were not one of them, if memory serves me right. Was that the right strategy call in the end?
I think it was a bit touch and go. I think the way the race panned out, the TTR strategy turned out pretty good. But we just thought, it's the same thing as usual, just follow the leader. If they're going to take a risk, then we'll follow them. But I think with the Ryco car staying out there, it was just a safe decision.
What happens if you're the leader then? What's your strategy?
Yeah, we were kind of thinking stay out, so I probably would have stayed out. But yeah, it can be a bit touch and go with those early safety cars, and you're not really on top of fuel strategy like I was tonight, so it's just a bit of a guessing game. And
then a great battle at the end, chasing down Tom Freer and a bold move at the hairpin. Did you feel comfortable in that battle? Did you feel you were going to get by Freer eventually, or was it sort of a bit of desperation there to get through and get away with Madison down, chasing you down as well, and just holding him off in the final one?
Yeah, it was pretty tight there. I think of about 5 to go or 6 to go. Tom started to drop off a bit, and I started getting a bit of draft, and that helped me keep Brad behind for a little bit. And then I thought, look, they're closing on me. I just got to do something. I did something aggressive for once, and it paid off. So I think they just come together a bit behind, and then Mads got around the outside there. So I was just trying to hold him off, and luckily we did.
You mentioned not being really particularly comfortable this week. Do you feel you're going to be in a better spot heading into round 2, which would be pretty ominous for someone that wasn't comfortable and finished second?
Yeah, I think unfortunately I'm going to miss Phillip Island, so that's a bit of a bummer. But there's a lot of work going into both this championship and Pro Series, all starting up now. So I'm sure with just more laps going into the season, I should be more comfortable. But I've just got a few setup things to iron out on my end, finding out what I need from the car, that sort of thing.
Well, congratulations on a fantastic race, Griffin. And before we let you go, who do you want to thank for helping you get there tonight?
Just a big thanks, as normal, to Sean and the whole team for everything that goes on in the background. Everyone's put a lot of work in for all the series that are starting up again at the moment. So big shout out to everyone in the team, and also to our partners, Racecraft Simulations, Turn-In Race Apparel, RSW Graphics, Racing News, and Prestige Cinematography. And a big thanks to you guys for putting on the broadcast as well.
Thank you very much, Griffin. Hope to see you again back in V8SCOPS very shortly.
Cheers, mate.
Brilliant stuff from Griffin Gardner to come home with second place, and an excellent drive to third from the 3-time champion of this series, Madison Down. Running a different number for this one, Madison. Is that intentional?
No, I just was probably a little bit slow on the trigger to sign up, and not having run last year and all that, you don't reserve any numbers or anything. So yeah, it's got to probably been the first time ever just about in SCOPS or Logitech series or anything like that I've run anything but 77 or 1. So no, it was just a number that was available. I think it turned out to be Adam Briggs's number, so sorry about that to Adam Briggs. I stole his number. We're planning on racing a production car this year. At the moment, it's got car number 72, so I just went with that. So that was the reasoning.
Well, the number seemed to bring you a little bit of luck, at least those who just looked at the results page would say that. But I think for those of us who watched the race, far from it. You guys tried a bit of an alternative strategy. Stuck in the midfield under the safety car, decided to pit only 5 laps into the race, and ended up making 3 pit stops on the way to a podium finish. So that seemed to have worked out really well for you guys.
Yeah, it did. We made a mess of qualifying there. We didn't really have a car in the window and tried 3 different car setups on 3 different laps and butchered every one of them. So we put ourselves way out of position. And yeah, with that safety car, took a bit of a punt on strategy. Knew that it was a risk doing so, but we also didn't have a lot of track position anyway. And so, yeah, see what happens. And yeah, managed to make it sick. I mean, we didn't really have the car speed to match the Speed Cafe guys and some of the others either. So we knew we couldn't really win on pace. Qualifying showed that. So, yeah, we tried something different. And, yeah, to go 18th to 3rd was a pretty good night.
Do you think you'll be able to repeat the feat at Phillip Island?
Well, Phillip Island's usually a pretty strong track for me, so I'm hoping we can go well there. I think it's, from what I'm hearing, it's a different format with 3 sprint races, so I don't recall ever doing a format like that, especially at that circuit. So, no, we're always strong there. Hopefully we can wheel it out and put it up the front.
Excellent stuff. And of course, TTR's participation in SCOPS has been in and out a little bit in the last 18 months or so. Are you guys going to be committing to the full season or just taking it a race at a time?
For me personally, it's probably a race at a time at the moment. It's hard to commit time to 2 series. However, obviously I didn't do a single race last year. I've already done 1 this year, so the plan is to do more racing. Whether that's every round or not is a different story. I do plan on trying to get to as many as I can, and yeah, just try and do a little bit more racing this year. So yeah, it's gonna be a pretty full-on year with a little bit of real life racing, a little bit of and running 2 different series in the supercar. But looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what you can do both in this series and in Pro Invitational as well. Madison, thanks for joining us. Anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we let you go celebrate your podium?
Oh, look, we got a lot of new partners this year. So we actually ran a new livery tonight, or new old livery, I guess, just a lot more logos on it. So obviously VRS has stayed on board and they've been great for us, but we've also got Kirapak Sheet Metal, Factory One Design and Signage, Super Cheap Auto and Penrite as well. So had a lot of additions in partners for this year, both in the sim and the real world. So really looking forward to representing all those guys in 2024.
Madison Downs starting off his 2024 on a high note with 3rd place here at Montreal. And that's going to bring proceedings to an end. Ryan, next round, of course, on the 17th of March at Phillip Island. First time a 3-race sprint format has been used in V8SCOPS. I am rubbing my hands with glee, waiting for that one to come around.
That one's going to be a lot of fun. 3 races, 3 opportunities for the field to make a mess of it going through turn 1 at a track with a very high mid-quarter speed at turn 1. I'm sure it'll be fun. But no, it's a great track for racing, Phillip Island, isn't it? And you get that slipstream effect. It's easy to follow cars around there and some great overtaking opportunities. Be one of the races of the season, I'm sure, one of those 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in here on SimSpeed TV, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Kick. We really appreciate your patronage of this channel. Big thanks to the crew at Aussie Online Gaming for helping to put this series together for the first time in 2024. I'm Reese Gardner, Ryan Jones with me in the comms box. Big thanks to Scott Rankin for joining us early on in the cast. Jay Kennedy, of course, pushing all the buttons behind the scenes. We're SimSpeed TV. You've been watching V8SCOPS 2024, but it's only the first round. There's plenty more to come. We'll see you at Phillip Island.